Yeah, so now we're going live and thanks for doing this. Dobie, so I wanted to talk to you because I've interviewed you before and you posted something on LinkedIn um about some changes you've gone through or
Good positive
some things that
changes,
you've realized.
positive things, Margaret. That's the thing. It's a rough world, everything's doom and gloom and what's going to happen. And I just try to think, you know what? I can't do anything about that. I can do something about myself, and we all can, but most people don't.
Yeah, so what do you so can you just share what you've realized, in like a long conversation instead of just like a short LinkedIn post?
Yes, what I did was I decided September is kind of like a back to school, and it's kind of trained into our minds to, start over. Everybody has New Year's resolutions, and by January 3rd, you're back to eating cupcake frosting and, not just a lump on the couch. So I thought, well, if I start in September, so I've been doing walks. I think today, as we record this, is 913 days in a row. I've done at least 10,000 steps in a row. That alone is a day. That's about 5 miles. So I thought in September I'm gonna amp it up, and I try to get done before noon. So in September I started at 5 a.m. I got up and I got out on the street at 5 a.m. and started walking. So it takes about an hour and a half. So I'm done at 6:30. In that 30 days, I did 28. I got up at 5 in the morning. It rained 2 days, so I drove to a Walmart, which opens at 6. So I got done by 7:30 in the morning. But I averaged 15,000 steps, which is about 8 miles a day. And I only allowed myself to listen to positive thinking, YouTube videos. Nothing about the war, the election, or anything like that. And I have to say, it is now October 5th. It's like I feel like a new person in so many ways. I look at things differently now. It has totally helped. I'm not saying, I'm fixed, I'm cured, I'm healed, everything's going to be all right, but I'm better. I'm noticeably better. And if I can do it, I know that anybody else can do it too.
Okay, so what are some things that you've changed in your perspective?
I think to be a victim, a lot of us have this happened in childhood and that sucked, and I wish it didn't happen that way, and my parents didn't love me, and whatever it is, I think everybody has that to a certain degree, and people react differently. Some people drink, some people do drugs to just kind of mask it. Some people live their lives in blame. Well, I wanted to be a guitar player, but my parents would never send me to guitar school or buy me whatever. There are people all the time that train themselves to do a lot of things. And it comes within. Life is a sum total of choices. I know that's corny and sappy and you hear it all the time, but it's true. So I think, you change your life, you change your choices. And I've dramatically changed my choices and I can feel it already in 35 days. And I was doing that before that, but just I'm on a groove and on a roll. I haven't talked to you in a while and, I changed my frequency. You contacted me. Hey, Dobe, you want to be on my, that's good. I knew you, I liked you. We got along well, but now we're clicking. And I think that is what's happening with so many people I haven't heard from before. And it is tangible and I can feel it every day.
Yeah, so okay, can you because I remember when I did meet you in person, we talked for a little bit um and then you gave me your excellent book which I read. And that's what I want to interview you about, but I kept contacting you and you weren't available. But this book, Monkey in the Middle.
Yes. Published by
eh,
Eckhart's Press right in Chicago. Rick
Right.
Kempfer, a radio person, and Dave Stern.
Yeah. And I had a lot of questions about your book because I feel like you had a lot of tough times. You had a very rough upbringing, a very
Hmm.
rough.
Many entertainers do.
Yeah, why is that?
I think because you have the rough upbringing, you assume in your mind, well, if I could be that. I mean, when you were a kid, I'm sure you had idols. It could be,
Yeah.
musician, singer, actor, actress, I don't know, TV show. And then I don't know if you ever got a chance to meet those people. They're human like everybody else. A lot of times they had idols and mentors and troubles that made them want to do that. And I think, especially comedy, you think the laughter will end it all, wipe away all the childhood pain. If they like me because I'm funny, all my pain will go away, and they'll be give me the love my parents never did, and that's just couldn't be more wrong.
Okay, but also in other areas, in other professions, people also have rough childhoods
Yep.
and they become so how come entertainment puts such a spotlight on it?
I think there's maybe extra needy people there. all the good comedians, and I can't speak for anybody else, but since I'm in stand-up comedy, and we've been around radio too, a lot of wackos in radio, and I mean that in a friendly and a customer service kind of a way. I mean, I
Mhm.
admit I'm nuts. Most people don't, and I think that especially in comedy, there's a whole lot of hurt in there. You want to feel better about yourself without therapy? Read most any comedian's autobiography if they have one. Going back to Charlie
Oh,
Chaplin, was he a comedian? That's debatable, but he was an actor. He was the comedy source of his generation. His life
yeah.
was miserable. I don't want to be that. And it's like, okay, if my life is better, will it make me not funny? I don't care about that. I know some comedians that, well, if I get healed, I won't be funny anymore. Fine with me. I don't
Oh,
care.
okay.
You know what I'm saying? I think people are afraid because being able to make people laugh is the only self-esteem that they have. That's all they
Yeah.
can do well. And if they lose that, then what do I have?
But then also there are a lot of bad comedians because I've seen a
Oh
lot of people
gosh,
coming.
yes.
Okay, like so for instance, I'll just give an example that some comedians will get up there and they'll talk about their girlfriends or whatever. And I think to myself, do you actually have a girlfriend? Because you look like you don't really take care of yourself too well. And it doesn't sound like you're going out that much. And they make up these scenarios. And I think to myself, why don't they just talk about real life and make that funny instead of making up these scenarios?
You should be a manager, Margaret. That is the smartest thing I've heard in a long time. I think it's great. I think comedy now is evolved. I've been doing it 40 years. Man, where does that time go? And it used to be there was some kind of art involved. You think, okay, I have a reason to be up there. Now it seems to be like therapy. Well, I get the stage to tell about my problems, and like I say, you're bashing a girlfriend, or I heard women bashing guys, or gay people bashing gay lovers. I don't know what people bash other people. They don't look inside, and it's like, okay, the audience is there for them, not you. That's, I think, the big mistake of many comedians make. You're here to love me. No, I'm here to entertain you as an audience member. That's a big difference, fundamental difference going in.
But some of their scenarios, though, I don't think they're real. That's my point, is
I
that they'll talk
agree.
about my girlfriend and I went out, I'm thinking, dude, you have a girlfriend? You don't look like you really, I don't know what kind of girl would like you. Or they talk about their experiences with various people that they pay to do certain things. And
Well, it's always, they want to shock you, so they'll do a rape joke or a bodily function joke, or they try to stun you. Well, it's all been done before, and I think a true artist of anything. I mean, I know you don't have kids, correct?
no.
Do you know? I mean, if you have nieces and nephews, all their artwork sucks. But if
Yeah.
they're the niece and nephew, the parents put it on the fridge anyway because, oh, little Egbert did that, and I love him. Well, you could love him, but his art sucks. And the same a lot of times with those comedians. It's like, okay, you're not doing art, you're just up there doing a crappy refrigerator painting.
But has it always been like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it has. And you have to work through that. I teach classes, and I thought you can't teach anybody to be funny, but you can teach the fundamentals. And I call it baby teeth. Everybody has baby teeth and they fall out. And once they fall out, one by one, you never need them again. Then your new teeth come in and you go to the next level. And I think, baseball has spring training. There's a time in any profession where you have to have a learning period. And in comedy, that's what it is. So the first time, I mean, I think you need a mentor. Do you ever go to a T-ball game? Oh my gosh, that's horrible. And if there's no kids you're interested in, that is the ultimate torture. I know the prisons are full. Okay, you can go to 6 months in prison, or you can sit through a T-ball game of kids that you don't know. I'll take the prison, thank you. It's
Yeah, speaking of
torture.
prison, with your upbringing, because people probably look at you and think, oh, this guy's just some Midwestern guy, but your upbringing was so rough. I remember what you talked about with going to a baseball team in inner city Milwaukee or
Yeah,
something.
I was the only Caucasian on the team. We all got on great. It was really, we had a good experience. But I got to know, to sit and talk to people that are different than you. It's an education if you let it. We were all friends. We never had any arguments at all. It's like, well, what's it like growing up in your world? What's it like growing up in your world? I had a guy told me my dad was a biker. I was raised by my grandparents. My mom abandoned our family. I was 6 months old, and I have two older siblings. And the guy said, you suffered more than any white boy I ever met. And he didn't mean it in a bad way. It's like the pain is pain. And I think to feel pain, you can be empathetic for others in other situations. I don't know what it's like to give childbirth, but I could sure imagine it would be painful. I'll never experience it myself, but I could be empathetic about it.
Yes, as I say that in your book, I'm just showing the book so people know it's very
Thank
good.
you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Margaret.
monkey
Thank you.
in the middle, and I've made a lot of notes. But one thing I noticed is that I want to say this delicately, but it seemed like you put yourself in these situations because at some point you do make choices.
Hmm.
And then you kept talking about like, oh, nothing goes right for me. And I thought to myself, well, eventually you have to make the right choices. Infamously with your friend.
Well, for those who don't know, I won't give away the plot, but my best childhood friend since, we were 11 years old, robbed a bank that he used to work at, not once, twice. Same bank, two times. Tried to blame one of them on me, the second one. He wore a gorilla mask, helium balloons, and a tuxedo, and that's why it's called Monkey in the Middle. And I had to testify in federal court against my best friend. And I think, what you just said really opens up to me because it's like, oh, things don't go right. I kept saying that, and I think I manifested that. I'm not trying to sound like Tony Robbins and all, but I think you do manifest what you say. And if you come from a rough background, not making excuses, sometimes that's all you know. Your parents or the people are supposed to be your ones that love and you can trust. You'll never do anything. Your dreams, you're never going to do that. After a while, you either believe it or you rebel against it, and sometimes you just accept it. That's the worst. And I guess I accepted it for a while, and it sure manifested itself. It's not necessarily doing that now, but it sure took a lot longer to change than it should have, in my opinion.
Yeah, because when I read the book, I thought, oh my gosh, he's had such a rough childhood with his basically your parents abandon you.
Yep.
And then because your mom took off, but then your dad, he left you alone and you guys got into, yeah.
Yeah, I say my dad's parents, my paternal grandparents raised me, and my grandpa was great. And he said, I tried to reach your father. He said, in the crib, I could tell there was something wrong with that kid. I could never reach him. And then you were in that situation. You were supposed to go to a foster home. I couldn't put you in that situation because I didn't know where you're going to go. So he said, I felt that I owed it to you to try to raise you myself. And he did. So I will be forever grateful to him for that.
Yeah, because I've heard that with other people too, including comedians, where they said if it weren't for my grandmother or some person in my life, then they would have gone a horrible way. But the thing is that okay, I saw that you had a horrible childhood nightmare, and
Mhm.
then but I saw that you kept doing certain things, and a lot of your refrains in the book, in my opinion, seem to be "Woe is me, why does this always happen? Woe is me, why does this always happen?" And I kept thinking, okay, at some point you have to just turn it around and just think okay, to prevent this happening, I'm going to do XYZ. This is when you're older. But it just seemed like you sort of had a kind of victim mentality, in my personal opinion. But
You could be totally right. And sometimes when you're in the muck and you're in the slime and you're in the jungle, you don't see it. I'm not making excuses. I'm not saying what I did was right, but yeah, I don't disagree with you. And it took all these years of, finally getting knocked on the head, say, wait a minute, I think I have some say here. Maybe I didn't take charge soon enough. Hopefully, so I heard people say it's so motivational. It's like, well, I don't know if it's motivational. I think it's survival after a while. It's like if this keeps going on, I will be dead. And I tried to be dead on purpose and it didn't work. So it had all these years to say, okay, let's try something else. And as I try other things later in my life, things have results are changing in a much better way.
okay, so well, let's first okay, first of all, tell me about that. So how have things changed specifically? Because you seem then
Uh
you're because what you wrote in LinkedIn seems very different than the kind of person I read when I read the
yeah,
book.
no, it has been because I basically said, all right, I have been told and I really feel that I have talent as a comedian. This is not bragging. I have elite talent, and that sounds so. Oh, to me, yeah, I just cringe when I say that. But there's almost like athletic. I don't know if you're a sports fan, but like baseball, they call you a five-tool player. You can run, you can hit, you can throw. You have all the tools. I was a baseball player. I was a left-handed pitcher. I was this close. I got a second look at a tryout with the Kansas City Royals. I didn't make it, so I didn't have all the tools. I was a little bit better than the average, but not enough to make professional. Excuse me, professional. In comedy, I was always a natural. In school, my teacher's like, "Do you think you're going to find a job telling jokes?" Well, I didn't know that was an option, but yeah. And from the first time I got on stage, even with my miserable life, I could always find a way to get laughs. And everybody said, "Is like, man, whatever problems you have, you're really good on stage." So that kind of helped them thinking, okay, well, why am I not getting paid? Why am I not getting the good gigs? That's my fault. So as I started to think that way and change it, right now I'm in a transition period. I've aged out of the comedy clubs, and I don't think, comedy club generation is that's now that we go to the clubs. It's the phone. Everything's on the phone. When I was coming up, I happened to be in a time where you went to comedy clubs. That was it. There was no cable TV in many towns. So people go to a comedy club that was open 6 nights a week. You could make a living. At 22 or 23, I was making a living being funny. I was pretty bad, as most people are when they start, but it was a supply and demand thing. Now I'm really good, and the supply way outweighs the demand. So I will find a way to get my own niche. And people say, "Oh man, you're so great. What took you so long?" Well, I had to figure it out. I'm sure you know who Rodney Dangerfield is. He didn't really
Yeah.
pop till he was in his 60s
Hmm.
because he wanted to he had a problem. His wife was ill, and he wanted to be a good dad to his kids. So he quit comedy for like 12 years, and he sold aluminum siding. And then he got back into it, and his career took off. He never really His talent was the same, but he had to get himself together. So I'm kind of a Rodney Dangerfield in that way.
But there's still comedians who are they are filling up the clubs. I mean, I live near some clubs and they
Mhm.
people go, but how do you deal with the phone aspect?
I wish I knew, Margaret. If I knew that, I would be, I think people, they put stuff out there, and I'm from a generation where, I lucky to have email account. It's like, all right, I'm a baby boomer. Sorry, I am. I
Yeah.
wish I wasn't. I'm okay on the computer, but the people, they got TikTok followers, and I don't know how to do that. Do I hire someone to do that for me? I don't know. Different world, different generation.
Well, you don't have to hire somebody, you can just learn how to do it.
Okay, but do I want to spend 10 hours a day putting TikTok videos up? I don't. And I see
Yeah.
people that do, it's like, okay, I've got 62 videos and I have 84 likes. Well, there's a planet of 8 billion. How do you do that? There's only so many hours in a day. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying that, well, it's not working for me at the moment.
Yeah. Well, okay, so but going from the time that you said you changed your perspective and now you see it differently. So when you were struggling to make it, how did you stay positive in spite of that?
It was fear because I didn't have anything else that I knew how to do. When I was in radio, I never quit doing comedy. I've been fired 5 times in all 4 time zones in radio. That's how stable that business is. But I got in it for stability. You know how it goes. It's insane. If stand-up comedy looks stable, radio is completely insane. And I just assumed in my mind I would get a job and be one of these people that are on the air for 20 years in a town, and I'll, get a wife and kids and a house, and I'll be able to do comedy and radio, and that just never worked out. It started to when I worked at every town. It's like I'd get to the point where, I'd go out to the clubs and it's heard on 97.9 The Loop. Oh, it's Dobie's here, Dobie's here. And I just felt it almost there. Then I got fired, right back to zero again. But I always knew that I had the talent. Hard to, you got to catch some breaks too. You got to catch some luck. And I think they have be in a good mindset to catch luck. And you're totally right. Oh, woe is me. Oh, things aren't going right because they haven't. Well, that compounds. And I think it might be too late, but I think I have a chance. I have my one chance now. It's in the fourth quarter, the ninth inning, however you want to use it. It's time to win.
We were talking about being fired, and okay, so can you just talk about the story that happened to you in the West? Like somebody, you were at one station, you were offered another job, and can you talk about that?
Well, I don't know if I was offered another job, but every station I was at, it started to go really well. And there's 3 words in the broadcast business you never want to hear, and I'm sure you heard it. Shut the door. You're in the
Mm.
office, shut the door, and they have your paperwork all filled out, and you're just a number, and they stamp you, and you're out the door. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I moved 2,000 miles from home. Oh, sorry. Hey, nice having you. I got a contract. Really? Sneeze, wipe, flick. There's your contract out the door. And you have to, I mean, I bought a house. It was in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I was fired. I had a house payment. What am I going to do? I lost the house. It's totally horrible. And I'm not sure that's one you're talking about, but that happened in Reno, Nevada, Salt Lake City, Utah, my hometown of Milwaukee, Lansing, Michigan, and the Loop in Chicago. And that was it. The Loop is the one that's like, okay, you're doing good. I was working for Zany's Comedy Clubs in Chicago. That's the main club there. The Loop was going to put together a Christmas benefit for like a fundraiser at the Rosemont Theater, which I think seats about 3,500. And I was going to be the headliner, and they were going to make people come out, and it's going to be great. And then we got fired 2 weeks, and everything got taken away. And I saw our boss that fired us. That I won't mention his name, but you know who it is. And this is long after, years later. He goes, you were the star of that show, and we were going to sign you to a contract. We were going to pray that you'd accept $350,000 a year for 3 years. And I said, you know what? Your prayers would have been answered. I would have accepted that. And I was living off my comedy money, so I would have banked all that like Jay Leno. So that was 2004. That's 20 years ago. I'd be buying you lunch now because I'd have a lot more money than that. But woulda, coulda, shoulda. So I was in the right place, right, the wrong time. I don't know. Didn't work out, but that it was there.
But why didn't they keep you then if he said we would have done this?
The station got sold, and the new station decided to fire us. And they
Okay.
took us in 2 weeks before Christmas, and I'll never forget the guys because sometimes change just for the sake of change is good, and I could be right, I could be wrong, but I've decided to let you go and have a fresh start. And there was three of
Right.
us on the morning show. Usually there's two. There was three, and we all got along. It was great. And he said, "But if I can make any calls for you, you just let me know." It's like, yeah, those two guys right next to me, they have wives and children, and Christmas is in 2 weeks. So if you want to make a call to their wives on Christmas morning and tell them why their dad doesn't have a job anymore, that's a call I think you can make. Two calls. Okay, I think we're done here. They got us out. Police escort, with the morning show until 9 o'clock in the morning. 9:30, we had to clean out our desk, not expecting to do that. So we had, and they walked us out with police, armed guards. What a nightmare.
Yeah, so why do you think that happens in radio? Because it seems like radio's so random. Like I saw this guy, I won't say his name, but he's really talented. He's been all over and he's really been able to make a living. And every time he was not fired, but there was a format change, you'd get something new. And now I see his posts on LinkedIn and they sound really discouraged. I think, gosh, if he's discouraged, then what's going on? Why do you think it's like that?
I don't know. I think the people that seem to be in charge, whoever that is, they don't know how hard it is to try to get a career going and raise a family and just live a life, and just because one station's got a format one day and they change the format, well, they can't keep the same personalities. Some of them, they just seem to cut. And radio is like, it's like high school. You get a job and you bring all your friends in, and everybody else gets fired, and you want to have enough friends where someone will bring you in somewhere else. It's like a big game of musical chairs, and it's not fun if you're on the wrong side of the music.
That's true. Yeah, it's really rough because there's some people who they'll befriend somebody in a certain way, they'll become friends with somebody and then they'll bring in somebody who may not even be that talented, but they get something
Yep,
and
sure.
and
Happens all the time.
and then it makes people who are already very insecure even worse because they know that they become victims of that. So,
Well, you've been around the radio. The one thing about it is it's always there's a smell in the air when someone's going to get fired, and everybody knows at the station but you. There have been times I was out in Salt Lake City and there was, I think, 7 or 8 stations, which is a lot in one big building. And there was this row of cubicles where all the stations were, all the morning shows. And one of the other stations, the midday woman was going to get fired, and I heard about it. And she was really nice, and she, living on a shoestring, and it was going to happen the next pay period, which was 2 weeks away. And I took her out to lunch, and I told her, I said, I shouldn't tell you this. Please keep it under your hat. I heard they're going to fire you in 2 weeks. So I just want to give you a heads up. I'm sorry that is. I had nothing to do with it, but I heard about it and I would like to know. And she got up in the restaurant and yelled at me, "How dare you? That's not going to happen." Yeah, blah, blah. And she walked out, stormed out. She wouldn't talk to me for 2 weeks at work. And I felt really horrible. Sure enough, on the Friday that it was supposed to happen, it happened. And she came over to me crying and gave me a hug. "I'm so sorry. I didn't believe you." I was like, "Well, I don't know why you didn't. I was trying to help you.
right.
I feel bad, but that just devastated her."
Yeah, there's somebody who told me too. Somebody said to me the same thing. I don't know if it was because it was redundancy or but I was going to be fired. And I wasn't even friends with this person. This person just was very blunt. And when the person told me that, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And like I said, they weren't even nice. And
Wow.
then I put in my notes, yeah, they weren't even nice, but I guess, I don't know, they just wanted to tell me for some reason. And that was like the best thing. And I think I saw them sometime later and I said, thank you so much for helping me out. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, remember when you told me, like, oh, okay. They were just being themselves, I guess.
Well, why do
But
you think it happens? I mean, you experienced it too. It's like, okay, no offense to you or me. How much were we actually making? Really, they're going to blow us out and save a big broadcasting company? It's got to be either personal or there's some kind of corporate, you know,
well,
purpose. I don't know.
I wasn't fired. I was just laid off because, and it really was a layoff because somebody said, well, just, don't go anywhere yet because maybe you can come back. So it was a layoff. But the reason why that was, I was barely making anything. It's because they were going to sell and they just wanted to, make everything
There you
more
go.
lean.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
That was one thing. Now,
your
the
X,
other thing, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say your X amount of dollars per hour is going to make the bottom line that much worse, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like $50 or something,
Right.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. And then another time it was, either it's because they went a different direction or they didn't like me or something, but that was one thing. I'm just glad I got out of there ahead of time. And then another time, I don't know if I was going to be, but there was that smell exactly what you said. And I thought, I don't think it's wise for me to stick around because I think something's building against me. I better get out of here. So I have no idea what they were really intending, but I did the right thing.
Yeah. And look, okay, how long have you been in radio now? It's been quite a few years.
No, I only do one thing. I do one thing on WBBM News Radio. I just do a minute that airs every week. That's it. I don't work in radio anymore.
Okay, but I'm saying you did for years.
Yeah,
So
17 years.
okay, how many times did you get fired?
Well, I didn't get fired because I avoided it. That's what I'm saying. I got
Oh,
laid off. I
okay.
got laid off once. I was gonna get fired in one situation where that guy told me I was going to. And then there was another time where I think there was a case building against me. It was like that smell that you're talking about, and something in
Oh
the
yeah.
air. And then I just got out before they could do anything.
And you
So,
think about it, I mean, I've been around dysfunctional people my whole life from family on.
yeah.
Radio, I think, has got the deepest dysfunction of all because you can be so secretive. A lot of times it's a person with two first names, Mike Michaels, Joe Joseph, Steve Stevens, Phil Phillips, and that's not their real name. And they're in an office somewhere and they don't, Margaret, you're doing a really good job. No, it's always through email, it's always through someone else, and it's always they make a decision without you. I just thought, have the guts to sit as a person. But I think in radio, people are used to building a false persona. They're the
Hmm.
nerdy kid in school. They don't get a chance. They don't have dates. So they listen to the radio and maybe they'll call up and win a CD or go down to the station and see how it is. And it's very, very secretive. I don't know. I find a weirdness and an eeriness about radio that I don't like.
Well, one thing that's happened to me is that since the pandemic, because during the pandemic, a few of us had to go in because we were essential workers, and
Hmm.
I wasn't even full time, but I had to do all these different jobs, and it just made me rethink. And I know a lot of people talk about the pandemic, how people thought about their lives, but I did too, because I was thinking, I'm doing all this different stuff, including some union work that's not even my union, and all these people are staying home working, and I'm going above and beyond, and then later I wasn't even rewarded for what I did. And I think something happened where I thought I don't want to live like this anymore. Now I love
Good.
radio. Yeah, I love
Well,
radio. And then I was in another situation where I thought things were going extremely well, then all of a sudden they weren't. And I thought, I don't want to live like this where I'm hated or I'm targeted or somebody's bullying. I thought, I just don't have the tolerance for that anymore. So I just moved on to things that are better. But I love radio though. That's a problem.
well, you're doing it, right? I know we're technically doing it. We're not on a broadcast
That's
station,
true.
but we're doing. So I think that's the thing I'm so glad about podcasts is because people like yourself. I mean, who'd hate you? I've known you for many years. We worked with Terry Agar. That's how I remember meeting you. And
Oh my gosh, he's great. Oh, I should interview him again.
yeah, I just talked to him this week, as a matter of fact. He's in Canada, and he did news talk here in Chicago. I know we're not here in Chicago, but I mean we're in. You and I are familiar with Chicago, and he
I'm
got
in
fired.
Chicago, but yeah, you're
Yeah, I'm
in.
I'm, I'm near Chicago. I'm by Kenosha, Wisconsin, so it's close. But I look at him, and he got fired. Then he went to WGN, and he got fired there. And he went to Toronto, and he's been on there for I don't know, was it 12, 15 years?
Yeah.
And he has management fights there too all the time. His ratings are
Wow.
good. He's one of the top guys, talk show hosts in Toronto, which is a major city, the biggest city in Canada, and he has problems. So if he
Wow.
has problems, why wouldn't you and I? That stinks.
Well, see, I noticed that the people who have the best situations in radio, they have an
Uh-oh.
agent. So, for instance, if they have something in their contract and their contract says, oh, you can work wherever you want and you don't have to go in, and oh, if you're sick, you can take off whatever, then those people have a good situation because they're buffered against. Because if the company, for instance, decides to cut everybody's pay or lay people off or make everybody come in or do whatever, the person with the agent in the contract can say, oh, it's not in my contract.
Mhm.
Okay. And they're just protected. Have you noticed that?
I totally have noticed that. I had an agent when I was in Milwaukee, my hometown, and I was going to get a job there. And do you know who Lissa Miller is?
No.
Lissa Miller, Brant Miller is a Chicago radio
Oh,
guy.
yeah.
Lissa is his wife, and she's got a pair, and I mean that in a good way. I mean she's gutsy, and she was going to be my agent. And I don't know, somebody turned me on to her, and the radio station in Milwaukee said, "Dobie, we would love to have you as our morning show. We're not going to talk to any agents. Here's the money, take it or leave it." And I talked to Lissa, and she's like, "They're not going to talk to me. So you either take the job." And it was horrible at the time. I think it's 1991 or 92. It was 30,000 a year, which is horrible for a morning show. But I could make comedy money, so I took the gig. Ended up getting fired a year later. It was absolutely horrible. But you're right what you said. But they're gonna, they know a lot of people want those jobs, and unless you're in a big station for big money, you're not going to get an agent. Station won't talk to them.
But there are some people who are, as you know, no names, but there are people who are constantly recycled. I don't
Sure.
know about Milwaukee. At first, I love Milwaukee, but I don't know about up there. But at least in Chicago, people are constantly
Yeah,
recycled. And
sure.
also they have agents, so they have like these special situations, like, oh, I could live in another state and I can dial in, and oh, I don't feel like coming in on. I now I'm back at the station. I don't feel like coming in on Friday, so I'm gonna have everybody else do everything while I sit in my room and my place and pied a terre or whatever. And it's like they have a special status.
Good work if you can get it. Wouldn't you love to have that status? I would.
Yes, of course. But the thing is that also there's no camaraderie with the other people because they have what
True.
they want. And see, if I were in that situation, if I were privileged, I'm the kind of person that would include other people. And
I
that's,
know you would. That's why I talked to you 17, how many years later, and you talked to me because you're a real person. I liked you back then. I like you now. And I hope you like me a little because
yes.
I think it's to the point where I don't have the status I did. It's funny when I was at the Loop mornings and I people would take my call and oh, I heard you on the Loop and every day. And I had this little thing called a 60-second soapbox. So every day I would do a little rant every day and people would talk about it. The day I got fired, probably 90% of those people didn't return my calls anymore.
Ooh.
And it's like, okay, I get it. That's in your status, can be something. But the
Oh, that's true.
oh,
That's
it's
true.
to,
Actually, I'm looking up the last time I interviewed you. I interviewed you in 2015, so that's about 10 years ago.
yeah, 10 years ago. There was a receptionist at the Loop, sweet lady. She said, I was here. She said, the day we got fired, she gave us all a hug. I know you don't want to hear this now, but she said, you are the most, what'd she say? The nicest person with talent that we ever had. I saw them all: Jonathan Brandmeier, Steve Dahl, Bonaducci, all of them. The talented people could be aloof, and the nice people didn't have talent. She said, I watch everybody. Nobody watches me. She said there was never a listener that came up here to win something that you didn't, you signed an autograph or you took a picture with them and you were genuinely nice to them. You didn't insult them behind their back when they left. She said, I see it all. Never once did I see you do that. And I said, that is the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. She said, nope, I mean it to you. She said, I know you lost your job and it stinks now, but you're going to recover from this. So what do you do? I don't think there's any reason not to be nice, but fame and success doesn't change you. It magnifies who you are. If you're a
That's
horse's
true.
ass before that, you're going to be one after. And I mean, I'm not going to name any radio names, but I've seen some that are just oh man. And these people are making $1 million a year. And from the outside, people like you and me that are fans of radio think, oh, I'd do anything to be him or her. But in real life, it's like, no, that's people that are zeros.
Yeah, I was gonna say that that's true because I did meet somebody when I was working at a company. I met somebody who I listened to for several years, and also
Hmm.
I knew somebody that they knew. So I brought, and the person was so extremely rude to me. And I'm thinking to myself, we're at a company function, so we're both insiders, and
Hmm.
the person was so rude. I literally cannot listen to them anymore. Like when they come on, I literally can't do it. And also somebody else too, who I thought was really great. They're very personable publicly, and they seem really awesome, and they were so mean to me. And
Wow.
again, I can yeah, and again when I was and I thought, okay, I can't see this person or listen to this person ever again because I know how they really are and they didn't treat me well. And actually you did bring up something about sincerity because literally somebody called me a couple days ago, and the person was, this is not a radio person, but the person was saying to me, you're a real friend because you don't want anything from me. You contact me and you don't ask me what you need. You just ask me how I'm doing. And I said, yeah, I know. And I said, yeah, because a lot of situations are transactional. Like, Dobie, I don't care if you're, super famous or not. You seem cool. Now, if
I
you are
try to
famous, I
be.
want to be invited. I want to be invited to
You're on
things.
the list. You got a lifetime pass, Margaret. And your friends and family too. Can I tell a quick story that I think is relevant to this
Please.
conversation? I was in Salt Lake City and on the morning show there, and I had a partner situation, and we also had a newswoman whose husband was the producer of the Fox morning show on the TV station in Utah. So when a guest would cancel, it's let's dress Dobie up day. They would do a makeover, they would do something, and it was just a joke. Oh, it's my turn to go out on the show again, so we do it, and it helped the station, radio station. It helped the TV station. I really liked the woman and her husband. They were just nice people. So I got a call one day and say, "Hey, we tomorrow we need you. Could you go by? We're going to do a makeover." And there's this clothing that I would never wear myself ever. I happen to live 2 blocks from a mall. They said, could you just swing by and, put your credit card down with it and just we'll wear it and then you can take it back if we have to send our person. Yeah, I live 2 blocks away. So I did it at night, went in there in the morning show. We did it. And I took the clothes back to the mall, an hour later. And they said, we can't take these back. These have been worn. I said, yeah, I had them on. It was for the TV show. I walked literally 10 feet and I put them back. Oh, we can't wear them. Well, I need to talk to someone else, please. It was like $400 of clothing that I would never wear. And this is not part of the deal. So the assistant manager came on and the manager, finally we got the store manager. And I had just, been on the air from 5 to 9 and a long day. And I was trying to be nice for half an hour. I snapped at her, Margaret. I did. And from being in comedy, I can be pretty mean if I need to be. So I took her out. I took the workers out. I took the security guy, just bang, 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 like Bruce Lee, I'm saying. And okay, I looked like an ass. They gave me the money back. I stormed out. Got an email at the station the next day. Dear Dobie Maxwell, I was in the store yesterday when you were put on that little scene taking your clothing back. And I listen to you every day, and you seem like such a nice guy. And I don't know what you look like, but I knew it was your voice. I knew when you said it, I will never listen to you again. And I read that email on the air and I explained it. I said, whatever her name was, I said, you were absolutely right. And you heard me do that. And I'm ashamed of myself. And it took a long time. And I explained the whole story like I explained to you. I said, I'm not saying it's an excuse, but it is a reason. I'm human and I was wrong. And I hope you listen to me again. But if you don't, I will totally take it. And it was a lesson to me. I don't know if she ever listened again, but people called, oh, that's okay. You can have it. I said, no, no, no. I said, I don't consider myself a celebrity, quote unquote. But in this town where I'm not from, I am put in a position being on the radio. I am a celebrity, and I will never ever do that again. Then we had people call up, oh, you came into a restaurant and you gave me a big tip, blah blah blah. And I wasn't doing it to, self-aggrandize myself, but that was really a lesson. And sometimes you can catch people on a bad day, but then there's people that it gets around. And I'll tell you a guy off air here after we're done that is was I think he's back on the air in Chicago, but he was on forever, made big money. What a low life. And I hear nothing but bad stories about him, but he made a lot of money for a lot of years. It's like, how does that work? I don't know.
Well, because I mean, the bottom line is that they're good entertainers. So if their
I
ratings
guess.
are good, and
Okay.
also with the contract, because they might have a really good contract, but if their ratings are really good, then they might get away with it. But I think nowadays there's less of a tolerance for mean people in the workplace. I don't know. Or maybe there's not because actually I still encounter a lot of mean people. So,
Man, I understand that. And it's there's just no reason for it. I'm sorry. We all have bad days, we all have problems, but to be mean to somebody else, that is just inexcusable.
but
Sorry.
a lot of the talent though in various situations, even the reality shows, like these people are not professional entertainers, but they get hired for reality shows, and even can become really difficult.
Okay, let's turn this around. This is my new attitude because it used to be like, oh, let's dig up the dirt. When you say you work with anybody big or a celebrity, not you, but anybody, what's the first thing people want to hear? They're a total jerk, or they were the greatest people since
Yeah,
the
what are
Lord
they
Jesus
like?
Christ. Right, but and they were okay. Nobody wants to hear that. They're either pulling the wings off of flies, or they're next to the Lord. So who have you met that's been good? Have you met
Oh,
anybody?
different people. I mean, yeah, but I don't want to name it. I don't want to say, okay, well, I'll just say one person who's extremely talented and seems like a friendly person is John Williams. He's a radio guy.
Oh,
And
okay, I know who that is.
for
Yeah.
some reason he won't do podcasts. I keep mentioning how great he is, but he won't do podcasts. But he is, I saw him in different situations. So I saw him at work. He was also very encouraging. I saw him one time at some presentation near where I live. He was just attended something. And he's extremely talented.
hmm
So he's very quirky, he's very committed to what he's doing, and he didn't seem jerky at all.
You know who Loretta Lynn is?
Yes.
Country singer. She was at a place up in Milwaukee. There was a casino that had a wonderful place called the Northern Lights Theater. It's about maybe an, I don't know, 1,000 seat theater. Best stage I ever performed. Absolutely loved it. So they had comedy shows there once a week, but she was there, so they moved the comedy show to another room. So we got a chance to see her show and to meet her. So we did the show and we came back, and she's meeting everybody. And I went up to her and said, "Are you the one that took our room for tonight?" We're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I would never do that." I said, "I'm just kidding, Miss Lynn." But my point is, she was totally reacted like humble. I'm sorry, apologetic, and she was as big as it gets in the country. That really impressed me with her. And we talked for about 5 minutes, and she could not have been any sweeter and genuine and more down to earth. Love her.
Well, people say that about Springsteen. I interviewed somebody a while ago who said Bruce Springsteen is like the best.
I
And
heard that
I
too.
mean,
Yeah, I heard that too.
do you ever meet Bob Newhart?
You know, when I was at the Loop, he was in for some book signing or something. And I remember I called the agent and we were on the air. He was doing it early. And I said, look, I'm a comedian. We'd love to come and talk to him, even if, just for 5 seconds if I could meet him. Well, he's a little bit tired. He's going back to the hotel. So we were on our way there and he canceled. So no, I would love to have. Have you?
No, but I read his memoir. I read his memoir last year, and he seemed to me he was living the dream. I mean, first he's from actually the west side of Chicago. He wasn't from Oak Park. He's from the west side of Chicago. So which and he grew up like pretty poor.
Hmm.
And then he came up with that telephone thing. He and his friend used to do these telephone bits. And then he became complete A-list, everything. Everything went his way for years and years. He barely had a failure. His comedy hit with the public consistently. He became very rich. He had the best social life, et cetera, et cetera. And he didn't strike me, at least publicly, as somebody who would be jerky, but I don't know what he was like behind the scenes.
Well, I heard, excuse me, I have a friend of mine who's a writer. He wrote for the Oscars, Billy Crystal, and everything. And he went over to Bob Newhart's house one time. His name is Ed Driscoll, really funny guy. And he said, I went to Newhart's house and he was in a really exclusive neighborhood. And I was looking to find his address and I found it, but he had garbage cans in front of the house. So I accidentally, with my car, knocked over his garbage cans. So he said,
Yeah.
I got out and I put all the garbage back and I said, rang the doorbell, Mr. Newhart, I knocked your garbage cans over. Oh, did you pick them up and you put them back? Okay, good. And just real down to earth, went in there, had his session and left. So just really professional. And you want a guy like that to make it, I mean, down to
Yeah.
earth and humble and all that stuff. And you think about it, to have one sitcom is a successful one is amazing. He had, I think, two, but did he start a third one too? Amazing success.
There was one that didn't go well, but I think that was his only.
Hmm.
He didn't really have many failures. Plus, his stand-up comedy was so popular,
Oh
and
yeah.
but he really did grow up. Even though he seemed like very milquetoast, he sort of grew up in a tough situation. Not like necessarily violent, but he didn't grow up privileged. It didn't strike me as growing up privileged.
Well,
So,
you know who his best friend was, don't you? Don Rickles.
oh,
And Don Rickles is a big insult comic for back in the day. And Rickles used to say, Bob Newhart is my best friend. And he, has this image off stage. He goes, when we're out, he's the wild one, not me.
that's
And I think
interesting.
a lot of times, a stage persona is crafted. I got a chance to work with Jerry Seinfeld one time, and it was in Pheasant Run. It's a resort which burned down now in St. Charles, Illinois. And there was a big place there called the Mega Center. And between Christmas and New Year's, they had big acts, and then the big acts would come. I think Leno was one of them, and Kevin Matthews was a DJ. And they would come over to the comedy club and do a set, and I was hosting the show. And this is just before a sitcom hit, and he went out and he did his 10 minutes and got a standing ovation. Everybody loved him. And then he got back to backstage and he was swearing, oh, I effed up my opening. And we all looked at him and he said, what's the matter? He goes, well, you swore. He goes, I'm from effing New York. Everybody swears. He goes, I don't do it on stage. It's a business decision. And he was a lot harsher in real life than his act. Why is it? He wasn't like that at all, backstage. And I think a lot of times it is a craft. It is act. It's an act.
Yeah,
And so sometimes on
yeah,
radio, it's the same.
yeah. Because how do people deal with that? That's another thing. I'm wondering if it affects people's psyche because I would find it hard to always have a persona that
Oh
was so
yeah.
different from my actual thing. So do you know people who had that, but then it caused some anxiety or some kind of issue psychologically because they were splitting themselves?
Yes. Dice Clay, Andrew Dice Clay. I work with his opening act on a cruise ship. And I remember seeing Andrew Dice Clay start when I was first getting started. I was just barely an open micer. And there was a club in Milwaukee again. That's where I started. And he was the headliner and he did impressions. He would come out and do Sylvester Stallone for 10 minutes, then John Travolta for 10. And he's Jewish. He was a Jewish guy from New York doing impressions of Italian guys. And the Dice guy was basically a com composite of guys that he knew from New York with the jacket and the ho hey ho and all the way. That was not him at all. He's actually a pretty soft-spoken dude. And that really, his fans were all those guys that were like Dice Clay. He's nothing like Dice Clay. So he said, my friend said, he goes, he would just get in a limo and put the windows up and not talk to anybody. And he basically hated his life, but he's making, selling out arenas. Pee Wee Herman's another one. He's nothing. I mean, it's a character. He's not like that. So, okay, if you could be Little Margaret or some character thing, and then be rich and famous, but have people recognize you as that in restaurants. Would you be able to live with that? I wouldn't want that myself.
No. I mean, I te see teaching is not entertainment, but teaching you definitely need a persona. And also I teach a lot of immigrants.
Hmm.
So you have to be very careful, very patient, you have to be very even
Hmm.
and you have to keep it together. But that's not so different than my real personality. But if I could really be myself and make a living from truly being who I am, I'd
Hmm.
be extremely happy. But a lot of times, and I know that Rush the band, they
Hmm.
wrote about Limelight.
Oh, I
Neil
love that
Peart wrote
song.
Limelight. Me too, because he wanted to do his craft. He wanted to play drums, and I'm sure he met all these people, all these fans, and he said it's like living in a cage. But I would find it I'd find it very hard to totally have a different persona and make a living from that. And people expected that all the time. I think I would need major therapy or something if I had to do that.
Do you know who George Clinton is?
Yes.
He's my favorite. Dr. Funkenstein, why a, you know, dorky looking Caucasian from the Midwest would like George Clinton. I got a chance to meet him and spend a day with him. And it was he's not at all like that. And we were at like a lunch kind of a thing where the fans could come up and talk to him. And the fans are lining up, and at the time he had the wild hairstyle, and you couldn't. I mean, he just he's magnetic to look at, whether you know who it is or not. It's like who's that? So we were walking from the hotel to like 3 blocks away to this thing. It was downtown in Houston, Texas, and people are just staring at him from everywhere. It's like, boy, this is what it's like to be famous. And the security guards came up to him when we were having lunch, and people were lining up, and he said, you want us to shoo him away? And he looked away. Only they could hear him. Said, I'm a ham. This is what I do. I asked for this. Thank you, but I'm totally fine with it. And he turned around, he signed every autograph, and it's like, okay, he had a grip with it. And I said, I play the drugged out Dr. Funkenstein space guy. He goes, because that's what lures people in. He goes, I couldn't be that if I had and his band has got like 30 people in it. And he's got to put all that together. So that's a character that he has embraced and accepted. And it's kind of, I guess, cool to play that, but he's got to be that guy 24/7.
Well, Tyler Perry created Medea, and it was actually
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
accident because I saw what happened. That somebody didn't show up, and then he became that character in the stage play, and it went well. But I'm reading, I think he's so talented, but I'm reading the book. It came out several years ago. It's basically Medea. It's in Medea's voice. The entire book is in Medea's
Oh,
voice.
wow. Okay. I have a lot of
Yeah.
respect for him. I mean, just the sheer volume of stuff that he cranks out, and
Yeah.
created a niche and a genre, and just persistence, and nothing but respect for him.
Yeah. But and also another thing is I did see him preaching at a church. So I just have I just have a lot of respect for him. I've never met the guy, obviously, but he seems multifaceted. And the fact that he was able, I'm still reading the book, but he's able to write over 200 pages in a woman's voice, in a character's voice, and keep it
Wow.
up.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if I could do that in anybody's voice. I don't know if I could do it in my own voice.
Yeah. Well, you did. But when you met all these famous people, though, did you ever ask them advice about fame or anything? Did they ever
No,
give you any
I
advice?
was always told, and it's probably somebody that wasn't famous that told me that. It's if you ever meet a famous person, just treat them as you would any person. Don't fawn all over them. You could say you're a fan of their work if you want to. He goes, I wouldn't recommend opening with that, and just be real. And then they'll open up to you the most. And I think that's totally true. So to answer your question, no, I probably should have, but I didn't. But everybody wants to
Okay.
know who have you met that's famous, and then they want to know how were they.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, actually, recently, the person that stands out who's famous, well, is only famous in Chicago, is the mayor of Chicago.
Okay.
And what okay, what happened was when I used to work in radio, sometimes I'd have to cover certain things. It was through audio, so sometimes I'd hear the raw. It's called the raw before they officially talk,
Hmm. Hmm.
but the tape was rolling. And one time I heard the mayor, he was at some community center, and there were some kids at the community center, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Brandon." And I thought, okay, this guy said that, and he's not officially, there's no official mic on him. I just heard him through the, whatever was rolling.
Right.
And I thought, this guy's got some layer that's different. Okay, so anyway, the point is that then I thought to myself, oh, I want to meet him sometime. And then I was after I taught at the school one day, my friend and I were talking in the parking lot. She's like, "Oh, there's a mayor." I'm like, "Really?" And so then I just ran in. And he was, of course, surrounded by security and stuff.
Hmm.
And somehow I was able to, I asked one of the security people, I said, can I talk to the mayor? And they said, yeah. And I told the mayor, I said, the mayor said, oh, but I just want to say, we're praying for you and this and that. I just like told him some encouraging things. And he said, oh, thank you. My wife and I feel everybody's prayers. And I thought, okay, I'm glad I met the mayor. I'm glad he wasn't a jerk because other politicians are usually surrounded by people and they don't want to be approached.
Hmm.
And he's obviously like sort of controversial. And
Did
I
you
walked
like
away
him?
thinking,
I mean, did you
yeah,
did?
in the minute I met him, yeah, I thought,
Mhm.
okay, he is the guy I heard in that raw audio, and he shook my hand, and then somebody took a picture, and he's way taller than I am, but
Mhm.
he was very gracious, and I thought that's cool because I don't even know this guy. And then another person I met was the governor of Illinois. I met him somewhere else.
JB Pritzker.
Yeah, JB Pritzker, and and then what happened was one of his people was sort of trying to get me away. It's hard to explain, but somebody was sort of stuck up around him. It's hard to explain. And then I got to talk to him I just like, oh, I just want to tell you. So, like I just told him some stuff. And he's like, oh, okay. And I thought, okay, this guy seems pretty human. So
Hmm.
I was not disillusioned by those two people who are in the
I
news all the time.
I think that's the word, human, and I think everybody is, but sometimes there's insecurity there, and there's celebrities. I don't want to name names, but there are people that just have this unbelievable reputations of being a jerk to everybody, and they're still
Yeah.
celebrities. So I don't want to be that.
Well, I mean, I've concluded that I wouldn't want to be a celebrity, especially now with social media, because there's so much invasiveness about social media.
Oh man, yes.
But I would love to be rich.
Well, that's possible to be rich and not famous, don't you think?
Of course, there are many. I live around a lot of rich, non-famous people. I live near the Gold Coast. That's where the governor has a place too. But yeah, there are a lot of rich people around me. But I noticed that I did meet a rich man the other day at the gym, and he was saying to me, "Well, he's like, I can't walk well anymore. I had to sell my place in Hawaii, blah blah blah." He's like, "There's really no difference." And I said to him, "Yeah, there is a difference because then you could just basically do what you want." And he was like, "No, no. Sometimes you're limited by what you can do." I don't know, but the guy was also older. He had everything in perspective.
Well, that's cool, and I think it must get at the end of the line, you're thinking, boy, I'm rich and I could do it, like you said, anything I want to. How much would I give to buy some youth back? Can't do that.
Ooh, that's deep. Okay, so yeah, so what is like? Can you get more into that?
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at it, money's great, and I've kind of had a lack of money most of my life. Whenever I had a
Yeah.
radio show, again, I would get paid twice. So I'd do comedy and get radio, and I would buy lunches if I could and be good at, then I would lose out and I'd go back to, being the bum life again. But now it's to the point where, okay, I was pretty young in those years. I'm 61. Geez, I didn't think I'd make 31. And I look at it now, it's like, okay, I can feel geezerhood and old age approaching. And you think about it, are there any regrets? And if I do hit a jackpot, Rodney Dangerfield, they always said he was bitter, and he hit it right around my age. And he was and had a great career for 20 years. He died at 82, but man, those 62 to 82 were great years. And it said the same thing, it sucks getting old. So I don't know. I guess you got to enjoy the good things that you have. You can still be rich. Do you make an effort? Do you study money? I didn't. And it's in the last few years, I've been really trying to master that skill.
Well, no, I mean, I don't have the energy to try to be rich, and I like having a simple life. But I'm just saying, if I were, I think it's because I live around a lot of rich people. So then
I
I look
mean,
to see what their lifestyle's like. Oh, okay, what do I do?
hopefully you can get, winged a little bit by a car and just sue them for, maybe lose a toe and make 8 million. And I mean, how much do you need too? That's another thing. Do you have a high lifestyle? I think, being grateful is, I know that sounds pretty zen, but to be grateful for what you do have, that's a mindset too.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely grateful for yeah, I definitely am grateful for what I have, and I don't care if I'm not rich. I'm just saying if I were, because I see people around here have especially during the Democratic convention, a lot of the people stayed around here.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, that's another level. They had their drivers, they had their people, they had all this different stuff. I just wouldn't want the fame or anything. But wait, okay, back to growing up though, because you're talking about when you were young. Can you
Hmm.
please talk about your grandfather? Very
My
important
grand,
guy.
he was the guy. If it wasn't for him, I'd be dead or in jail. And he just had a wisdom about him, and a lust, a zest for life. And he came from a rotten background, and he said all I ever wanted to do was be a good father to kids. And then I had your father, was my firstborn, and I just never could touch him, talk to him, reach him. So I just worked on myself. He would always be studying and reading. He got his college degree from night school at age 52, which I think is very impressive. And my favorite picture of him, it's in the book, is him in his, cap and gown. And that, as a kid, 52 seemed so old. Oh my God. Now it's like, I wish I was 52 at this
Mm.
particular point. And he put it together. He said, I did it just for me. I didn't do it, to try to get a job or anything like that. And he was always studying, a lifelong learner. One of the things he did, which I thank him for every day, is when I was a kid, he took me to the library. Part of it was, to get away from my grandmother, but we go after, dinner to the library for a couple of hours, and he'd say, okay, what do you want to learn about? And this is at the time, now I sound like a dinosaur, but I am, I guess. He said, okay, whatever, baseball. So he showed me how to go to the card catalog and find books on baseball and go look at them and dig them out. And he wouldn't get it for me. He'd make me do it. And okay, well, then you take it out and he showed me how to, you check a book out of the library. And then it got to the time when I was in high school and he said, you're going to take a typing class. Typing class. What am I typing class for? Because he said there's going to be the time when you need it. And I fought him. He goes, hey, stupid. Where are the prettiest girls going to be in typing class? Oh, okay. So I took the class. And I mean, who knew computers were going to happen? But I can type about 65 words a minute. And it's
Yeah.
one of the things that I thank him for that every day. I know people to this day that are typing on the computer with, one finger. Are you a good typist? To me, it's one of the
I'm
best.
good. Well, I'm a
Mhm,
good typist because in high school everybody had to learn typing.
mhm.
And also I actually teach immigrants computer skills and
Fantastic.
I make them do typing and I said to them, I showed them an example. I said, "Okay, I'm going to do a 1 minute typing test right now." I got like 60 or something, 64.
Mhm.
And I said, "This is where you should be at." And this one student of mine who was from Mexico, he said that he was offered typing class when he was in Mexico, but he's like, those are for girls, that's a girls thing. And
Mhm.
he said he absolutely regrets it because
Yep.
now he needs to know how to type.
I think everybody does now in the world. And my grandpa
Yeah.
couldn't see that back then, but I am so grateful for him every day for that alone. But
But
he said you got to communicate. At the time he says to write and to see your thoughts. How's anybody going to know you lived if you don't leave them something to read about you? So he had and when I was in high school, he would write stories about his life. And this is at the time when to make a copy of it, there was not an electric computer typewriter, one of those that you really got to push down. So he would handwrite the stories, and then I would type them in triplicate using what was copy paper, carbon paper. So that was really hard to type through that. And he would pay me, I think at the time it was $1 a page. And there would be 14, 15, 16 pages, and it would take me sometimes most of the day to type it out. And he would write about his childhood and things like that. And looking back on it, it's like, was he a good writer? Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But I think that really planted the seed in me to write about my life. So tell me,
okay,
go ahead.
yeah. What was his childhood? Can you tell? Because I don't think you really get into that much in your book.
Yeah, he was there was
Your book
seven
here. Excellent
seven.
book.
Thank you, monkey in the middle.
No,
He
really.
I greatly
Monkey
appreciate
in the
it.
Middle.
It's so nice of you. I agree. So he was 7 boys and 1 girl, and I think he was the third or fourth boy. And I think I did. This is one story I did include in the book. And his sister was named Sarah, and his mom, his dad was a lout and was trying to be in show business in a band and basically chasing women and drinking and all this stuff. So his mother would have to go pluck chickens and clean out ash boxes and whatever it was to feed most of the kids. So it was all the boys' job to watch the sister Sarah. And she was like, I think 5 or 6 years old. And my grandpa said it was my day to watch her. And she's a little kid and she ran around. I was playing ball and I turned my back for 5 seconds and there was a streetcar in there and she ran out in front of the streetcar and the streetcar killed her. And everybody's looking out there. And he said his mother blamed him the rest of his life for letting the daughter die and it killed him. So he was in hospice care and he's in the morphine drip and he's going through his life. And the nurse told me, he goes, oh, he must have really loved your grandmother, Sarah. My grandmother's name was Mary. Well, he keeps out calling for Sarah. So even his dying days, that never left him. So he had a lot of pain, and that was his motivation, I think, to live a good life and to be a good guy. So he had his own faults and dents and shortcomings and stuff like we all do, but he made a point to be the best he could, and he drove that home in me, and I try to honor him every day.
Yeah, you did say you did talk about that story in the book, but what else about his background? Because he was Jewish, right?
Yeah, he was Russian Jew, and I think they came from Minsk, as the family did. And most of their relatives were in New York, as you know, no Jews in New York, are there? No. So he did, and he said there was Milwaukee was a industrial thing. He said his grandfather didn't want to work in New York, so he just came to Milwaukee because he knew somebody there. So it's kind of total random chance, or I probably would have grown up in New York. But they never practiced, and most of them did. A couple of them, would refer to it. But I thought, why not be? That's your heritage. Why not be proud of it? But he just never did.
Well, what I'm wondering though is how was he able to be so strong despite the fact, well, I mean, first of all, how come his mom blamed him for the rest of her life?
Don't know
And did
that.
he ever try to say to her mom, did
Yeah,
he
he
try to
did.
reason with her or
He
anything?
told me he did. Yeah, he said I tried. He said I'm a kid. I don't know how old he was. She was 6. He was probably 12 or whatever it was. And he said, I turned my back for a second. I was playing ball and she just, I don't know how that happened. And I tried to tell mom that and she just, and how it didn't want to hear it and, wailed and cried and just, oh, he said it was devastating.
That's very cruel to do to a kid because
Yeah.
really the adult's supposed to be the one in charge.
But she's out plucking chickens because the old man is an
Right.
asshole. So I mean, how do you, this is, I don't know. I
Now,
felt bad for him though. His
were both of his
brothers,
parents, yeah.
I'll say his brothers were not good people. They just weren't. And I knew probably, I think 5 out of the one of them died, drank himself to death at age 48. He was long dead before I was born. And there was another one that was older than my grandpa, and he moved out to California because he saw that. He said, my family are a bunch of scum. He said,
Uh,
I don't want anything to do with them. He just basically disassociated, moved to California, and my grandpa was the only one that he talked to. So once a
well,
year, go ahead.
no, someone's what? Go ahead.
No, once a year he would go out and visit my uncle Dave. I talked to him on the phone a bunch of times. I never did get a chance to meet him. So there was some good in the family. I think any family's got good and bad, but yeah, there was some of his brothers were not good people.
Now,
I'll leave it at that.
were both his parents from the US?
No, no, no. Both Russian.
Oh,
But
so
they're
both
both.
sides of so both your dad's parents came from Russia.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, because you know what you're describing reminds me a little bit of Kirk Douglas's background, a little bit. Did you
Okay.
ever read his memoirs or anything?
He's very interesting cat. Yeah, I've read some of his stuff that he's um I think he was from Russia too, right?
Yeah, well, and also his dad was, I've heard if he was born in Russia or born
I
here,
thought he
but
was. I could be wrong.
also then his dad, he was also, he drank a lot, he wasn't educated, his mom had to take care of the family, his dad was constantly out, he didn't take care, he was also very negligent. And it just reminds me of a little bit of what you're telling me about your grandfather.
I wonder how Kirk Douglas was with Michael. I
Oh,
mean,
I'm
I never really read the relationship that they had there. I mean, Michael was
well,
a successful.
I'm sure it's very different because he had lots of money, etc. But when he grew up very poor, Kirk Douglas grew up very poor. His real name was Igor or something really complicated
Isir
last.
Danielovich.
Oh, Isar.
Danielovich.
Okay, that's what it
Yeah.
is.
Hmm.
But see, but I'm just wondering what it was within your grandfather that made him thrive intellectually and gain so much wisdom.
I think it was again a choice. He wanted to. He wanted to better himself. He had a desire. And he was probably 5'7", wasn't a large person, anything like that. He just wanted to be. Here's the thing that I don't think I put this in the book, but he was always entrepreneurial, and he learned that he's what America's a chance to make something out of yourself. And he had 2 partners, and they had rental properties, and they would, do whatever it is to be landlords and stuff. And they had several properties. And in the mid 60s, my grandpa told me this on his deathbed. He said, my 2 partners came to me and said, we want to sell all of our houses and we have an opportunity to buy the franchise rights in southeastern Wisconsin for what's the name of that place? McDonald's.
Oh
They
my
could they could have
God.
owned all the franchises in southeast Wisconsin of McDonald's. And my grandpa said, "Are you out of your mind? What do they sell? Hamburgers? People don't need a hamburger. They need a place to stay. I think you guys are out of your mind. Well, we think it's a good opportunity and we want to do it. Well, buy me out because I want nothing to do with it." So they bought him out. They bought the McDonald's franchises. They made millions in 20 years. Then they sold it and they bought an investment company. I can't think of the name of it now, but it's huge there. So they became multi-millionaires. And my
Wow.
grandpa told me on his deathbed, he said, okay, he said, at the time it wasn't McDonald's. I mean, you and I'm sure we know everybody that could have bought Apple stock when it was, cheap. But he said, I went safe. He goes, don't be afraid to go for the big score. He goes, I never did. I had your grandma, your dad, your uncle. He had two kids, had to feed the kids. I didn't think it was smart at the time. He goes, swing for the fences.
But
So,
then what if you swing for the fences and you fail?
well,
Like
I
what did he
did.
say?
I
Yeah, but
did.
what did he say about that? What did he say about that?
He said, he's on his deathbed. He goes, I'd still be here anyway. He said,
Mm,
it's at the end of it, you don't look back and say, oh God, at the time you're safe. He goes, I wish I would have chased the big one.
mhm. Well,
So
then another thing, which reminds me, that story reminds me of, remember that guy who came up to you and he had an idea for comedy? It was about Hillbilly or something. And it was Mike, or no, who was it? That one comedian. And you said,
it was Jeff
right.
Foxworthy.
Okay, yeah,
He
tell that
said,
story.
you might be a redneck. Yeah, I was working in Detroit, Michigan at a bowling alley that had a comedy club in it. And there's another comedian from Chicago named John DeCosse, who he was from Chicago, but I met him there. So I was the opening act that week. John DeCosse was the feature act, and Jeff Foxworthy was the headliner. And after the first or second night, Foxworthy, nice guy, he said, hey, man, you're really funny. I like you, man. I got some ideas I want to run by you. I want to buy you lunch tomorrow. And I heard like Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, 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 buy you lunch. That's all I heard. I'm 25, whatever it was. So I go there and I'm eating my sandwich, and he's got his 3-ring binder and his 3x5 cards, and he's very organized. And he said, okay, here's my idea. You might be a redneck if, and then I do jokes. What do you think? And I said in my 25-year-old wisdom, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my entire life. He said, why do you say that? I said, because that's a bit out of Mad Magazine. I heard that when I was a kid. It's a formula. I said, if you can sell that garbage to the American public, Mary Kay should give you the biggest Cadillac she's got, pink, because you're scamming the public. He said, well, I think I'm going to make $1 million with it. Margaret, I got right in his face, $1 million, $1 million. And we're laughing about it. I said, man, you're a nice guy, but I'm out. He said, okay. And he went on to be the biggest selling comedy entertainer in America. And I met him years later, and I said, hey man, you remember me? He goes, yeah, you're the guy that told me I'd never make it. And we laughed about it. And he laughed a lot harder than I did. I'll tell you that. He goes,
Yeah.
you weren't the only person that told me that idea was bad, but you got right in my face. $1 million, a million. He did it back to me. And it's funny, he goes, I had the idea. And he saw the public's taste. And I never saw that. And I'm thinking, all right, that was my McDonald's moment, I guess. But I sure did learn a lot from it. And good for him. He's a great guy. He deserves all his success. And sometimes you got to be open to ideas. It was right there. He asked me, and if you look at his autobiography, he talks about it. He goes, I was working in Detroit, Michigan, and I worked at a bowling alley that had valet parking. And I knew there were rednecks everywhere. My name's not in there, but I know that story, and that's totally true. That's what he
Oh
saw.
my gosh.
Yeah,
But
that's
there
true.
But at the same time, you had some good insight because you were in, I think, Las Vegas, and
Mhm.
you said you were playing this big room or something, and you were really nervous. You're like, oh my gosh. Or it was either LA or Las Vegas. And I think it was Las Vegas. And then you looked out and you said, okay, that's fine. These people are from the Midwest, or I know these people. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Well, do you ever watch the show The Sopranos?
No,
I'm
I
not a
never watched it, but I know what it is.
I'm the same thing. I've never watched it because I've been doing comedy. But there's a guy named Steve Sharippa, and some viewer will know who that is. He's a big dude, big, knuckle draker looking bruiser. And he was the guy that was running the club back then. And a friend of mine got me in the club. And at the time, this is before press kits and online, you had to have a physical, press kit, bio, resume, 8x10 picture, and manila envelope. So I'm sitting backstage, and other comedians I didn't know. And he comes in there. He goes, "You the new guy?" Yes, sir. Gave my promo. He takes the promo and he flings it across the room. Just flings it. And he said, "You will be doing 6 minutes on my stage tonight, not 5 minutes, not 7 minutes. And I don't want you, as his quote was, laying big giant animal turds on my stage. Are we clear?" Yes, sir, we're clear. And he storms out, kind of walks out, and I look at the other comics. They're not, but I'm thinking, okay. And then I looked outside, and that's when I thought that. I think, wait a minute, I've been doing a comedy my whole adult life. These people are from all over America. I know how to entertain these people. I'll do great. And I went in at 6 minutes, and I boom, 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 knocked it out of the park. And he comes back in the room, and he picks up the stuff, and he dusts it off. He goes, "Hey, man, I'm sorry. You got a lot of smart asses in here. I got to bust your butt. You're great. Call me. I'll book you." And I never called him because I'm thinking if he's going to do that, I don't want to work for a guy like that. And he
Hmm.
turned out to be a big, big TV star in Sopranos. But yeah, that's true story. That's pretty intimidating though.
But wait, why didn't you want to work for him even though he approved of you? Because it sounds like he was it was trial by fire or
Yeah,
something.
it was trial by fire, but I'm thinking, you know what? Because at the time, and here's my mindset for that. It's like, okay, I was able to make a living being based in Chicago, which I was for 25 years, and Las Vegas was just out of driving range. And if I had to fly to those places, there's enough work where I could drive to. If I got to fly, it's going to cost me more because you got to get there yourself. So I guess I was small-minded and think, well, why don't I just go to Kansas City or Minneapolis or Omaha or Detroit when I can make. So Las Vegas was just basically another week. It's not like you're going to get discovered in Las Vegas. So that was my mindset. In retrospect, I should have gone there and said, hey, I work Las Vegas even once a year, bought a plane ticket. But again, you're too soon old, too late smart. That's a German saying that my grandma used to use. And I know that now. I didn't know it then.
Yeah, because Bob Newhart played La Vegas all the time. Well, a lot of those
Yeah.
guys did.
I would have loved to play Vegas, but not for that guy. He was a little bit of a maniac, you know. It just wasn't for me. Looking back on it, yeah, I was in. I probably could have bugged him. I didn't do it, but I had enough other work. I had enough other people that liked me. Guess I thought small.
Okay. But you
But
also know things in retrospect. But like you were saying though, that's you said that that's what you've changed with your approach to life is
mhm.
now you're flipping that around. So any other things that you've changed in your approach?
Yeah, here's a big F word that I'm not going to use any forgiveness. I mean, that's a hard one. I'm not going to get, personal. You have to tell me, but I mean, I'm sure you have people in your life that are just really hard to forgive. It doesn't have to be your parents. And, it's difficult, especially the ones that hurt you the most. And a lot of people can't do it. And for years, I couldn't do it. And I really worked on myself. I'm thinking, this is going to kill me. It's going to eat me slowly, but I'm going to die if I'm not able to forgive. I don't have to like those people. I don't have to hang out with them. But my father and my mother and all those people, radio guys that just, inspired me all over the country. And I can honestly look you in the eye and say, I forgive every one of those people. I don't like them. I don't want to be around most of them, but I forgive them. And that just opened up a lot of space in my soul, my heart, my being to work on me and to say, okay, what do they tell you on an airplane? Hey, before we crash, get the oxygen mask so you can breathe and then help everybody else. I didn't help myself for all the years, and I'm always helping other people. It's like I got to help myself, and that was a big one: is learning to forgive people. Not easy, and there were times when I'm thinking, "Boy, okay, I forgive them," and then I get really mad. Something will come up. It's like now I'm 61 years old. I think I really have let it go. I mean, you can bring it up, and it's like, okay, that was a bad situation, but I forgive him. That's on him. That's not on me or her or whoever it was. That was the
Well,
biggest thing right there.
yeah, because the thing about forgiveness is a lot of people, and it's true that, forgiveness is for you because you're
Hmm.
not affecting them by
No.
not forgiving them.
Hmm. Correct.
But I think that the thing about forgiveness is I realize that sometimes I think it's getting also over our pain and our hurt because sometimes
Yeah.
we do technically forgive them, but we still feel hurt. So how'd you get
Yes.
over that?
I made a choice that I'm gonna get over it. It's like it's okay. I can't change it. It's still there. But a lot of times those horrors, and I use that word because that's what it is. Horrors of childhood are only alive in your head. The people are dead. It's been decades ago, but it's still right here. And I think to disconnect it, and I think I really had to make a conscious choice. Sometimes I laugh about it. I got a cousin that's 7 years younger than me, and we go out to dinner probably maybe once a month, usually. And he had a nasty, he was raised by my dad's brother, who was not the poster child for fatherhood either. And we got a lot of stories and we talk about it. And at the end of it, it's like, look, the only place that they're living is in our head. Let's not let them live in our head anymore. And I think that, sometimes we laugh about it, but other times you analyze it and say, these people, they were hurting too. Does that make it right? Absolutely doesn't. But they reacted from their pain. It's like, because that was their choice. I choose not to do that. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm to the point now where I think but when I get up in the morning, say, okay, the biggest idiots that are in traffic that are going to be there today that are cut me off, I refuse to let me scream at them. And they still do it. They still cut me off. Man, oh, you're a moron. Okay, good. Well, you're going to have a head-on collision someday. It's not going to be with me. And I'm not perfect, but I'm probably 98% better than I was even a year ago.
Mhm.
Calmer. I take a walk every day, 10,000 steps a day. It's about 5 miles. That's about an hour and a half out of your day. And it's great in many ways. I can listen to podcasts, but I also uh have less time to work on other things. But I think about myself. I'm thinking, okay, I could walk and be miserable, or think, what am I going to do today? Who can I talk to? Hey, Margaret asked me on our podcast. That's really cool. What do you think we're going to talk about? Things like that. And I make it, even if it's only that time in my walk, it's a time that I can focus on my day. Yeah, I'm still, could use more money, could use more, all that stuff that everybody else is going through. Is World War III going to start today or tomorrow? That's another thing that looms heavy over a lot of people. But as a whole, I'm the best me that I've ever been. Hopefully, I can have a little enough time left to do good with it.
Yeah. And I mean, reminds me, about the forgiveness thing. This guy Al Rosen, do you ever meet him? He's an engineer, radio engineer.
Oh no, there's a lot of guys named Al Rosen. There's a baseball player named. There's a yeah. I don't know that one. No, I don't know him.
Okay, well, he looks so I met him a while ago at WBBM. He was an engineer. At that time, he was just helping out Bears games. And he seemed so fresh, so youthful, so amazing. And he was in his 70s, and I said, "What's your secret?" He's like, "I've just learned to let go." He said, "There are
Yeah,
a lot of things that used to bother me." And he's like, "I just let it go." And every time I meet somebody who seems really fresh, who's older, I ask them like, "What's your secret?" I let things go. And after a
yeah.
while, my dad used to say, I'm not going to worry about it. But okay, so can I ask you about your
You
grandmother?
can ask me about anything you want to. It's your show.
Okay, because you write about your grandmother. So your grandfather sounded amazing, and then you write your about your grandmother who sounded horrible.
Icy, cold, German, mean, vicious, nasty. Talk about not nurturing at all. Here's a story
Wait,
that
wait, what's up with the German part? Because other people,
I think
'cause-
that's probably stereotypical. Germans aren't known for their warmth. You're never going to see a German comedy club, the Klaus's Comedy Bunker in downtown Stuttgart. I think stereotypes for a reason. Italian people are a lot of times, for the most part, pretty warm and friendly from my experience. There's Italian people in Milwaukee growing up, and Irish people tend to be they like to imbibe a little bit. Not all, but many. And in Germans, and Milwaukee's got a huge German population. This is a true story, and I can't really, you know, uh, it just is. Adolf Hitler said, "When we win this war, I'm going to move my base of operations to Milwaukee because there's such a German influence there." He said that, and that was very frightening as a child. Thank goodness they didn't win. But yeah, the
gosh, that
Germans
is
are.
frightening. Jeez.
Yeah, it's totally horrible. But that's a true statement. And just the Germans are. They're not bad people, but they're not warm and fuzzy. They're just not. And she had a horrible childhood. She was a bastard child up in a small town in Wisconsin, and her mother got pregnant. And back then, she was born in 1911, my grandma, and that just was frowned upon back then. And her grandparents raised her because her mom took off, and her grandpa was hurt. I think not even in the World War One. What was the one before that? There was some kind of Prussian war or something, and he couldn't walk very well, so he was handicapped, disabled. And they had a farm, and my grandma's grandma did a lot of the work. So she was raised pretty nasty and then came down to Milwaukee and met my grandpa. And just for whatever reason, she was just hard and cold and had no sense of humor, no warmth. And she beat me as a kid. And it got to the point where, well, she was about 5'3". So after not too long, the beatings don't hurt anymore. I don't know how old I was, 10 or 11. So she'd hit me and just look at her. It's like, okay, what are you going to do now? That made her even madder. And she'd beat me even more. And there was always a sense of rage and an anger. She practiced her Second Amendment right before anybody. She carried a gun with her everywhere, including church. She was packing in her purse, and sometimes she'd pull it out, and
Why
that
would
that
she carry it?
because she just didn't want to put up with any crap that in her mind. So somebody would get her to the point where, and she'd pull it out, sometimes in a restaurant, and it's like, okay, that got the attention. The times were a little different back then, and she didn't do it often, but she would do it. And it just got to the point where I had to leave. My grandpa died when I was 18, and I was lived with my grandma still. And I was 19. I had to get out of there. I didn't want to be around that. So I kind of saw her over the years when I had to, and there was a time when I didn't talk to her for about 9 years. Just we didn't speak at all. And then my uncle said, "Hey, you got to go sign a tax document or whatever it was." I said, "I don't want to see her." It's like, I really think she's changing, and she wants to see you. So if you could go, I was 37 years old. I went over and talked to her, and she saw me, and I didn't see the mean, vicious ogre that I saw as a kid. I saw this hurting little girl, and she had to be in her 70s then. But she just looked at me with these little girly eyes, and she came and gave me a hug, Margaret. And I think I'm going to tear up. I looked at it. That's the first hug I ever got from my mother figure at age 37. And I said, "What took you so long?" She said, "I don't know. Just I couldn't figure it out." And she spilled stories about her childhood and how much it hurt and how much she wanted to see me do good. And she said, "I want you to be proud of yourself because you wanted to do that comedy stuff. And we all laughed at you. And we all thought you were crazy and you're going to wind up dead before you were 30 and you were a complete idiot. But you know what? You didn't have any help from any of us and you did it and you stuck it to all of us. And you should be really proud of yourself. And you know what? Your grandpa would be so proud of you because that's all he ever wanted to do." And I started crying, and she started crying, and had another hug. And from then on, I would go to see her. I was living in Chicago then, so I drove up to Milwaukee, and once a week, usually Wednesday, but Wednesday or Thursday, and I'd buy her a Big Mac or Chinese food or something. It was cheap, but to her, she never drove a car. And that was like, oh, filet mignon. And she sat there and tell me these stories about my grandpa that I never heard before. And it was wonderful. And it was just the best time. I look forward to those Wednesdays. Oh, I'm tearing up right now, Margaret. I'm sorry. This is so emotional. And it was awesome. And and eventually her brain went. But those times, and she said, everybody figures it out sooner or later in their life. Some people do it earlier, some people do it later. And so there's when you walk into life, her theory was there's a giant window that's closing. And as you walk through it, it's your job to make it through before the window closes to figure out life. And then becomes a race against the clock to see what you can do with it. And she said, my window closed. I didn't make it, but you did. Now, what are you going to do with it? Oh, I'm sorry, man. This just really takes me back. But so I'm trying to do my best. And sometimes when it gets really rough and I feel like swallowing a bullet and there's nobody around, I think of my grandma and my grandpa. And both in their completely polar opposite lives have had an effect on me so much that it makes they're long dead, but every day I think about both of them.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well, yeah,
shouldn't
because I
expect
was
it to go there.
no, well, because I read that in your book, and for me, I was very moved by what happened, and
Hmm.
I'm just wondering what changed her, how she, or when she changed. Did she change some years before that, or?
Well, I didn't talk to her in 9 years, 9 or 10, whatever, how many years it was. I think she was alone with her thoughts, and she told me a story about her father that she only met him one time, and he was in I don't know the living room or whatever, and she was 5 or 6 years old, and she kind of tiptoed up to him, and he's kind of mean looking, and she said, "Do you know who I am?" And she said he looked at me and just shook his head and turned away and never acknowledged her. And she said that hurt me for the rest of my life. And she said, "What? You're 5 years old, 6 years old, you couldn't come give me a hug? Nothing." So maybe it took her all that time to recover from that just one little thing. That's the only time she ever met him. How horrible is that? Then I guess he worked on electric power lines apparently, and he fell off a line and he grabbed it and he barbecued himself. And she's like, "Good, he's dead." And she was happy about that. It's like, okay, well, that's emotions run deep. And I think a lot of times what I'm finding is you meet the meanest people, they've had things like that in their life. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but a lot of times that's why they're so mean. It hurt them so badly they don't know how to deal with it. So for a lifetime, they're doing what they're doing, and they're afraid that people are going to hurt them again. So they maybe put up that false front, that false facade. I'm not a psychologist, but I can see it from experience.
Yeah, 'cause I saw some interview with this guy. He used to be a criminal, and now he's overcome it, and now he helps other people. But he said what happens. Okay, I'm just going to use guys as an example. He said
Okay.
when he talks to other criminals, they haven't really gotten over it yet, or people in jail. He says, when was the time that you cut yourself off? Like there was a time where they were fine and then something happened and they're just like, never again. And then
Mhm.
they just start become really hardened. And sometimes it's, they might meet their dad laughs at them, refuses them, or some really horrible experience. And then he says, but then once you realize that was your change and you realize that that's what's affected you and led you on a life of crime, you can overcome that and change, if you
Wow.
realize the cause. Yeah.
I like that. So I've been around, people are in mafia, that kind of thing. Been around that because a lot of comedy clubs are owned by the mafia. Surprise, surprise. It's a money laundering place, whatever. And I got to know these people. I didn't join the mafia, but I knew them well enough to talk about their lifestyle. And they said there are mobsters that, they'll feed, go to orphanages and bring toys on Christmas. And then an hour later, they'll kill somebody. and they can turn it on and off. There's no connection there. And that's pretty scary. I don't know if I could do that, but like you
Mhm.
said, yeah, I think that happens.
Well, yeah, also Dick Van Dyke, he did talk. I always read these celebrities' memoirs, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
read Dick Van Dyke, I read Dick Van Dyke's,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
he said that Dick Van Dyke said that he got this offer, really, really good offer to do some club.
Hmm.
And then his manager's like, well, you better look in. I know he just like sort of looked into it and then he realized, oh, the associations maybe are questionable, so I'm not going to
Sure.
do it. But it's really good money. So it could have been connected to what you're discussing.
Well, I totally think it is. There's organized crime for whatever reason has been around since the history
Yeah.
of humanity in some
Yeah.
shape.
Yeah. Now, also now what I don't understand is why did your grandfather, who is so wonderful and insightful, etc., marry your grandmother?
Well, they were young. I mean, I think she was older than him by I think a year and a half, something like that. And back then it wasn't a dating thing. I mean, you're 16 or 17, whatever, and you meet somebody and you get married and you're married for life. That's kind of how society was. That's what they did too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess they courted a couple of years, but then they got married and that was it.
Well, I was gonna say also in your book that you said you wish that you had the grandmother like what she showed you at the end, but sometimes people do have those idyllic situations and they don't know what they have.
Sure. Oh, amen. Yeah, that's
See what
totally
I
true.
mean?
Hmm.
Because I also had like my dad wasn't a jerk or anything, but my dad was very critical, et cetera, et cetera. And then, but I helped him in his old age, and
Hmm.
I noticed he really chilled out. He was like a totally different dad. So at
Hmm.
the end, I didn't think, oh, I wish I had this dad all my life instead of these last 3 to 4 years. I thought, wow, I'm really glad I got to experience my dad in this way. And that's my memory. My memory is of him like that instead of all those other years.
So the good memory was on the way out.
Well, no, the good memory. What I mean is,
At the end, you had the good memory.
well, no, and what I mean is my memory. So,
Right.
like, yeah, my dad totally changed to be super chill. His
Hmm.
brain, he had
Hmm.
nothing wrong with his brain, but he just became super chill. And it was like I got another dad, and that's the dad I remember. I don't
Right.
remember the previous. And I thought about
Good.
that when you talked about your grandmother, because I thought, yeah,
Right. I would say I think sometimes the grandparents it's their mulligan. I don't know if you golf, but mulligan is like the second chance to do what they yeah, maybe it was a little hard on the kids, so maybe sometimes they overcompensate with the grandkids. I mean, you got to find it. My gramps, I think he said I used you as my experimental, and he would have all these things. He would take me on trips. I mean, who would do this? He called the school. He's not sick. He's with me. We're going on a field trip. He'll be back tomorrow. And we get in a car and we go on an adventure. And he took me on all these adventures. Sometimes we go to a stage play. I remember we were at the Schubert Theater in Chicago. I know they changed the name for it, but it's like, as a kid, I was probably 12. And then we saw a stage play and musical kind of thing. And he said, you don't have to like this, but you have to see it and experience it, and we'll discuss it afterwards. And he took me to a polo match one time. Why? He got tickets from somewhere, and sometimes we go to a Packer game and I like the sports. And we would talk about it. He said, okay, what did you like? What did you experience? He took me out to a fancy restaurant. He showed me how to eat with a salad fork. He goes, God forbid you're out with a nice woman. You're not going to eat like a farm animal. You're going to have this is, and it's like, that's what you're supposed to do. I'm sure he probably didn't do that with my father and my uncle, but he did it with me. And to this day, it's like, thank you.
yeah.
I
Well,
didn't
also,
like
I
it.
think I remember the drinking lesson he taught you.
Oh, yeah. He called me at one of his things. He's with me and we got in the car. Where are we going? You'll see. Okay, where are we going? And went to the school for boys' home, and in Illinois was in St. Charles back in the day. It was in Wales, Wisconsin, about an hour away from Milwaukee. And he had arranged with there was a show called Scared Straight in the 70s
Oh
when
my
kids would
God.
go and this was before that. He did it himself, and he arranged with the warden. He said, "I want to give my grandson a tour." So I walked through there, and these older kids are spitting at me, and I'm scared to death. And oh my gosh, it took about 20 minutes, and I'm shaking when I got in the car. And I said, "Why did you bring me here?" He's because this is the age when your father started screwing up, and I lost him. He goes, and when you screw up, think before you decide, because this is where they're going to bring you. And when they bring you here, don't call me because I'm not going to come and get you. You saw it. That's the best. Oh, the best thing in the world. So, okay, he says, okay, test number two, open the glove compartment. Okay. And there's a pack of Pall Mall or a carton of Pall Malls. Those are grandpa cigarettes, no filter. I mean, total cancer in a pack. And he smoked those, and he said, "Okay, there's your first carton of cigarettes. You have my permission from today forward to smoke. I don't want to smoke." He goes, "Okay." Well, my name was. He wrote my name on it. And I said, "Okay, well, when you want it, it's there. I'm going to buy you your first carton, but I'm not going to buy you another one." He goes, "If I didn't smoke," he goes, "I'm going to die of cancer," which he did. Because I'm hooked. Everybody that starts these is hooked. If you want to get into it, that's fine. Don't go behind my back. Be a man. Do it to my face. And I said, "Well, I don't want to do that." He goes, "Okay, well, what is there?" No, one more stop. So we stopped at this place called Hurley's Tap, and it was a horrible night, nasty bar in Milwaukee. And he knew everybody there because he was a dispatcher of garbage truck drivers for the city of Milwaukee. And he would go in there, and his drivers would supposed to be driving in there, and they're drinking. So he knew that place and the bartenders in there because he had to roust his drivers out. So we go there, we park in the parking lot. We're going to walk in the back door, and the door opens up, and these two guys are having a fight. One guy takes a pool cue and smashes it over another one's head. And one of them knew my gramps. "Hi, Al. Hi. Yeah." So you go in there, and we sit down at the bar. I'll never forget. I'm 10, 11 years old. And he said, "I want two Boombas." In Milwaukee, a Boomba is a big, big beer. Two Boombas, one for me, one for my grandson. Going to get him drunk today for his first time. I looked at him and said, I don't want to do that." And he goes, "What do you mean? I'm buying you your first drink." He goes, "Everybody else drank, you know." And I couldn't stop doing it. Your father couldn't stop doing it. He goes, "I want you to do it in front of me. I'll get you first drunk. I'll show you how to throw up. And after that, you drink on your, but you got to pay. I'm buying the first one, but not even." "No, I don't want this." "Okay." Well, so I guess my grandpa might have drank both of them. And we drove home, and that was it. And then on his deathbed, I was 18. And he looked at me and he said, "Remember the day I took you to the boys' home?" I said, "Yes, I do." He goes, "You'll be the only one. I'm so proud of you that you said no." He goes, "Your father was gone. I couldn't reach him, but you are on the peak of a house. You can go in either direction." He goes, "You're at a very important age. I'll be dead soon." He goes, "Make the good choices, even for the fact that nobody in the family said no. If you say no, you're the only one that'll do it. Please, for yourself, do it." So I never drank, never smoked, never did drugs. Not that I'm better than anybody, but he showed me that way, and it was such a great way to teach. Oh man. That should be a lesson plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad that he died when you were 18, but he left
Yep.
such a legacy. Because
Oh
even
my
I'm
God.
affected. I never even met the guy.
Yeah. Oh, he's great. He's a star of my life. And I got that picture of him when he's 52. And as I get older now, I I trying to look for it. I have a coin purse. I can't reach it right now, but the little, oh, here it is right here. I hope you can see it. The little, did your dad or grandpa
Yeah.
have one of these? That was a generation thing. I found this in a thrift store for 50 cents not long ago. I thought they didn't make them anymore. And it's funny. I said, "Oh, Gramps," because anything good that I wanted was in this little coin purse. I mean, if I wanted a comic book or an ice cream cone or a Mad magazine or something like that, he'd reach in there and pull out. And this is the wonders of the world were in here. And that was so funny. I had one in a store when I had it just in my pocket just for fun. And I took the change out, and this 18-year-old girl was like, "Oh, that's a cool new thing." I said, "Sweetie, this is not new. This is older than
Uh,
you and me." And we're laughing about it. She had never seen it before. So I keep it now as a remembrance to Gramps. I got a one-man show about growing up, and he's going to be, I'm gonna get these, and I'm going to give them out after the show because I
that's
think it's
nice.
just so iconic. When I look at one, I just have such good memories come through my head.
Wait, are you doing a one-man show now or are you
Yeah.
developing?
I'm putting it together. It's when I was doing cruise ships, which I absolutely hated.
Why?
It's
Why'd you hate them?
because you're just locked in the bottom like a fish, and I mean, it's like working at a nice restaurant versus eating at one. I'm sure if you're on, I don't know if you've ever taken a cruise, but it's probably fun to do for a week, but to do it week in and week out, and there's no window in your room, it's just getting there and going through, customs. It's a big, huge pain. But people would come up to me, "Oh, you're from Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin too." And he would talk about stuff. I said, "Wait a minute, why are we talking about Wisconsin when we're in the Caribbean and it's February?" And I just ad-libbed to one guy. It was, "Hey, Schlitz happened." I thought, that's a good name for a play. So the official name is Schlitz Happened, an old Milwaukee Blatz from the Pabst. And that's a clever thing. So my buddy's a writer friend. I came up with the Schlitz Happened. He came up with Old Milwaukee. That's a beer thing. So I wrote to the Schlitz company, which is now owned by Pabst, believe it or not. I told them, I said, "I want to do this show. I don't even drink. It's about my childhood in Milwaukee." And they went to their law department and they said, "We'll give you permission." So I've got written permission. They're not going to sue me
Good.
to use it. And I did it about probably 40 times in the Milwaukee area. Because when I moved to Chicago, people would talk to me about Channel 9 and Ray Rayner and Bozo and all these things that I never grew up. I grew up 90 miles from Chicago, but I never saw those things. But I knew Milwaukee things and things that we had, and DJs and restaurants and brands that were only in a certain town. So I thought that would be the theme of the show, and childhood would be the garnish, but the main course would be Milwaukee stuff. Then as I did it, I thought, childhood has got to be the main course, and Milwaukee is the garnish, because I think a lot of people have still pain from their childhood and all these different things. So I have it. It's mostly funny, but there's some poignant moments in it too. And I talk about, grandma and gramps and this. And some people, we all get dealt a cast of characters in our life. Some people get a sitcom, other people get a horror movie, and I got a horror movie. And Gramps was the only funny relief. So he's basically the star of the show. And I think people that grew up in that time and around that area, they love it. And Lenny Bruce talked about he wanted 100,000 fans. That's all, because he was very controversial during the time in the 50s and 60s. He would swear on stage, and that was just, he got arrested and sued and all those kind of things. He said, I don't really care. I need 100,000 people that dig what I do, and I'll travel around and make them laugh, and I'll have a great life. And I thought, I don't need 100,000. I need 10,000 people. And if they came out, 100 a show, Friday and Saturday, 50 weeks a year, that's $200,000. And if I spend half of that on promoting it, in theory, I'll make 100,000, not counting selling these or caps or t-shirts or something. And I might not be world famous. And, I'm a baby boomer. I can live in the town or, that I live in now and have a great life. But I think that there's another book there about just stories. A lot of people are hurting from their childhood. They just are. And I think that kind of comedy with more of a message like, hey, you know what? You got to deal with it. You got to forgive. If you don't, you're going to die miserable. A lot of our parents and grandparents died miserable. My grandma didn't.
That is amazing. Yeah, the thing about your grandmother, it's so incredible how much she changed. And you're
That's
right,
the
maybe
ending.
she,
That's the end of the
yeah,
show. Grandma's window.
yeah, and also she had the time and the inclination to be introspective because some people
Mhm.
don't do that.
No, no, and I had an aunt that she'd always blame everybody else, never made a mistake. So the other driver made the mistake, blah blah blah. And she died miserable. And it's so funny. I don't know about in your family, but when I had the people that died, they didn't have enough people to come for funeral. My father died, nobody cared that there wasn't no funeral because it's like there's not enough people that care about him. My aunt whacked out of her mind. Aunt Charlene, I'll never forget her. She's part of the comedy show. She'll live on, but it's like what a miserable bitch she was. Always made life miserable for my cousin. We talk about how miserable she made his life. So I'm thinking, okay, the best way to do is laugh at it because a lot of people have an Aunt Charlene and a lot of people have a grandma like I had. I don't think they had a Gramps though. Man, he was special.
Yeah. No, but there are some people, I mean, I met people who, oh my gosh, there is another famous comedian. I forgot his name. I forgot who it is. I'm sorry. I
That's
should have done
fine.
some research for this,
No, don't worry
but
about it.
he did have also a grandmother that was he grew up in a very abusive situation. He had a grandmother who loved him and that made a difference. Now I forgot who it was, but
Might have been
there are
George
other
Lopez. I know. I think
it's
George
not
Lopez talks about that kind of thing.
have you met him? It's not
Uh,
George Lopez, it's somebody
he,
else,
he's
but
not one I've met. I met a lot of famous comedians. He's not one I've met. Don't know
okay.
anything about him.
But there are various people, especially there are various people who do have somebody in their life, it's usually a grandparent or something,
Hmm.
who made a big difference. Like I did actually, I had this friend who her parents also were very like the mom took off, the father was he was messed up, and so the grandparents took over because to prevent the kids from going to foster care.
Amen.
And same story. Like the grandparents did everything. They helped.
Yep.
I mean, she grew up in a very bad neighborhood and but the grandparents helped and she really thrived and she's successful, etc. So,
I want to share something if you don't mind. This is a quick story. I think that if anybody's watching this and has a similar situation, we talked about forgiveness, that people don't have to be there, but you have to forgive them sometimes in your heart from a distance, even if they're dead, even if you never talk to them again, whatever it is. But my grandpa was born on November 18th of 1912. And I don't know if you knew this, but most cities will, if you approach them, you have to fill out forms, but you can have a special day honoring somebody in a city. So I don't know where your dad's from or where he was from, but if Chicago or even the suburb that you grew up in, you could go and say, okay, it's my dad's, anniversary, his birthday, whatever, and he did. Here's the things he did, and it would be, Mr. Larkin Day in whatever. So my grandpa in Milwaukee, it was his 100th birthday. So on November 18th of 2012, I approached it and I got a nice certificate, and I said, all the great things you did, and my book wasn't even done yet. I didn't release it. I said he was just a great humanitarian, and I love him to this day. So I still have that certificate that I was able to do that. So if there's a next life, I hope he saw it. But it felt good for me to be able to do that. And then the show, I'm going to show it. You know,
yeah,
because
he sounds amazing. Now,
yeah,
was there
he needs
anybody
it.
Did anybody else in his life or your life acknowledge knew how great he was, or was it only you?
No, it's so funny because a lot of the distant cousins that I met through the years that were offspring of the other brothers who were apparently just tyrants and abusers and nasty people. And they always said, it's like Uncle Al, we always loved Uncle Al. He was really good. And you got to, you know, a chance to be raised by him. Because a lot of times, I mean, grandma and grandpa did not get along. So if I wasn't at the library at night after supper, we'd go visit some of his brothers. And I didn't hate his brothers because I was just a little kid then. I didn't see what scumbags that they were. He got along with all of them, though. To me, that says a lot. A lot of them didn't get along with each other. A lot of them were bad people. But I call him Gramps. Gramps got along with everybody, and so that was kind of a telltale sign. So through the years, yeah, he had a stellar reputation. One time he had this guy was Italian and he worked for the city, I told you. And every weekend, his wife would bake this awesome Italian bread. It was fresh and delicious. I can still taste it right now. And he would bring a loaf for my grandpa over to the house. And I was a little kid. And and I asked him, his name, Angelo Messia was the guy's name. I said, Mr. Messia, thank you for this bread, but why do you keep bringing it over? Because, and he said, because I came over here. Uh, my parents were born in Italy, and Italians were really treated poorly back then. And your grandfather, I screwed up in the job, and he went to bat for me. He said, "I believe you in a person," and to for him to believe in me, it saved my life. I was able to keep my job and feed my kids, and to bring over a loaf of bread, and they were actually friends. This is years after he retired, so I thought that says something. You got some character if that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah. I'm
So
just
he was
wondering,
cool.
I just wonder, I just wonder, like, since your grandfather grew up in such a bad situation, all his brothers work for the city too, right?
Yeah, most of them were garbage truck drivers and stuff like that. But again, it was a safe job. I mean, they lived through the Depression years. So at the time, the city, your job, you might not have made a lot of money, but it was steady.
Yeah.
Everybody's got garbage. You need it, it's a steady. So he would do his other stuff, like that house stuff on the side. So his entrepreneurial things he did on the side to make extra money. But yeah, he always had it. And he told me, get a job with the, civil service. They called, get a civil service job. Promise me on his deathbed. He said, promise me you will get a civil service job. And I did. And I got a job as a clerk typist for the Milwaukee police station. And the only thing I typed was my resignation on the first day. I had to take Gramps, I kept my promise. And I couldn't stay with it.
What didn't you like about it?
Well, I'll tell you, I was third shift. They started you out. I don't know, I think I was 19 or 20, whatever it was. And usually when you start a job, they tell you, okay, well, the time clock's over here and break time is here and blah, blah, blah. It was the third shift at the first district police station in Milwaukee. First thing they told me, when a gunman makes it past security, go behind the metal desk right there because it's like, okay, this is enough for me. And the people were nice enough, the people I work with, but I'm thinking, I don't, and basically you have to type in at the time, when they would arrest somebody, the booking, when they get booked, then you have to type. So this, I don't know, somebody
Like
came
Barney
in.
Miller.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it was. It totally was. So somebody came in and I typed up something. They had bail money for somebody, and I said, "What? No tip?" It was a joke. And that guy yelled and screamed and lunged over the table. I'm thinking, this is not for me. So at the end of the shift, I typed out my resignation, and the sergeant said, "What are you stupid? You went through that uh, exam and everything, all the work to get to this, and you're quitting the first day?" I said, yes, sir, I am. This is I promised my grandpa I would, and this is just not for me. So I'm quitting. You're an idiot. You'll regret this. So that was it. One day.
Yeah. But obviously you don't regret it, right?
Oh my God, no, 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 no. I couldn't. I would have been lunging back at those people after the first week.
Yeah.
But I think
But
it's sometimes just there's not a fit there.
yeah, I'm just wondering now, this is my obsessive mind working, but I'm just wondering at what point did your grandfather look around and say, I don't want to be like these people that are surrounding me? Because he sounds so exceptional.
I think it was as a kid. I think you have to make up your mind as a kid. I truly believe that. And he thought he goes, I really wanted to be a father. And back then, I told you, you got young. Your grandmother was okay. She was willing to marry me, so I did it. I wanted to have kids. How many guys? Most guys don't want to have kids. It's the women that wants to have kids. I mean, I can't. No offense, as icy and cold and German as my grandmother was, I can't picture them having love relations. I just cannot picture that in my mind of minds. I don't want to picture it. Obviously, it happened at least twice. They had two kids. So that was pretty wild.
Because I
Different
remember,
time.
yeah, because I was saying my mom, my mom came from Germany, but Jewish, but and my
Hmm.
grandparents were very stereotypical German, very cold, like you said.
Oh, sorry to
And
say,
I was
yeah.
scared, man. And then I went to Germany and I thought, oh, this all makes sense. Because now they're laid back in Germany, relatively, but there's
Hmm.
still some characteristics. And I thought, oh, I could easily live here because this is like grandparent light, you know?
You know who Rick
Like you did not
Kempfer?
mess with my grandparents.
You know who Rick Kempfer is?
Yes.
He is a radio producer in Chicago. For if you're watching, that don't know that, and he was Jonathan Brandmeier, not Jonathan Brandmeier, John Landecker's producer for about 10 years, and Steve Dahl's producer for 10 years. When I worked at the Loop, he was our producer on the morning show for a while, and he's very German, and he's got the German work ethic and stuff. And I was talking to him about the story before, so I published the book through his publishing company, Eckhart's Press, and he said, "Yeah, my dad's named Eckhart, and he's over to Germany." And he said that the same thing. He goes, "It's yeah, they're cold, icy people." And he's not necessarily that person. I said, "Okay, did you hug your mom and your dad as a kid?" And he just looked, "No, it's just not. I
Oh,
don't know if you
yeah.
did. If hugging and Germans don't go together for some reason. Maybe it did
Well,
for
no, I
you.
did.
I hope it did. Yeah, that's
No,
great."
I did because my mom sort of rebelled, not rebelled in a bad way, but she sort of worked against it because she was raised super strict.
Hmm.
And so and then she wasn't like that as a mom. So yeah, we hug. She's really into feelings. Like if she were
Great.
still alive, like I have some issues right now. I'm going through some disillusionment right now.
Hmm.
And I was telling my husband the other day, I said, gosh, if my mom were still here, she could just look at me and say, what's wrong? And she would just get to the point. She'd go deep. And then I would talk to her and then I'd cry. I was like, oh, it's okay. But that's not typical German. That's not how she was raised.
Sadly, it's not that she was born over here or was she born over there.
She was born in Germany, and of course, Hitler happened, Nazis. So either
Not
you
good.
left or you were killed.
Well, I would leave.
Just like people in Russia. Just like see, that's what I was saying to you through a text one time a while ago. I said you should look into your background, your Jewish background, because I think what helps is when people look at their family history, especially if they were able to survive murder and persecution and going to another country, etc. And it makes you realize, like, wow, I come from people who survived.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think people realize just how tough it was in those times, and it's like you read about it, maybe you can see Schindler's List, I guess, and that kudos to Spielberg for trying to at least open up the world's eyes to that. But I think a lot of people really suffered in some hideous ways. You know who Viktor Frankl is?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that's real, man, right? You
Yeah.
don't fake that.
But what I was asking though, that's what I was saying to you in a text, but I don't think you didn't respond. Maybe you're going through something. But I really have you ever looked into your heritage through your grandfather's side?
and I'm sorry I didn't respond to it. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with text, and I sincerely apologize if I didn't
Oh,
respond
really?
to you.
You're so
But
popular. Okay.
I don't know what. Sometimes just people want something. I know a ton of people, and for whatever reason, so sometimes you didn't get back to me. It's like not intentional, but I did see that test. I'm thinking not that I wouldn't do it, but man, to me that would just open up a big can of Pandora's box worms, and it's like I don't know if I'm ready for that. To be honest with you, it's
Okay.
interesting and fascinating. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I got a hard enough time living now.
Well,
Looking
no,
back
but
at.
I guess what I was saying was, by the way, I did text somebody a story idea. I met somebody interesting last night, and people don't respond to my texts because I'm not rich and famous, like I was saying. But well, I think that the reason why I said that is because I read your book, this book right here, and I know I don't want it. Like, I really think people should read it just to get insight into what you're. It's called Monkey in the Middle. But I read your book, and then I listened to your suffering and stuff, and I thought, I think if you were to understand where your grandfather came from and his background, I think it would make you appreciate that you're from a lineage of survivors and people who have grit. And I think it would help you to appreciate your personality and so forth, because you do sort of have a self-loathing that I've seen in other people with certain kinds of backgrounds.
Well, I am trying to get over that, and I know if I can, I'm doing better. I sense magnificent improvement in from where
Good.
I came, but sometimes I don't know. I never make excuses. If I do something wrong, I'm the first one to point finger at myself. But just sometimes it gets so overwhelming, and it does, especially when you're by yourself.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, and I never wanted to put a wife and a kid, especially kids, through this horrible business. I look back and I just ran into a woman that I probably should have married however many years ago. And she had some bad health issues, and she's much better now. And I said, that would have been made me even more miserable because there's no way I would have left you. I would have taken care of you, but I would have got off the road and really, so my dream would have died. I wouldn't have been able to be rich, so I would have, probably some bitterness would have set in there. It's like, okay, I can take care of you, so I said maybe it worked out for the better. And she seems to be happily married now, and I'm happy for her. But she said the same thing. She said, man, I looked at you and I thought there's greatness in you, but you don't see it. So, maybe
Well,
it
no,
takes.
I think it's because honestly, I don't think people understand the really hard childhood you went through. Like, okay, you're not from Chicago inner city, but
No.
it sounds like you were from the inner city of Milwaukee. Were you
Yeah.
technically from the inner city?
Yeah, yeah. You go to that neighborhood now, it's like I didn't want to go there through the daytime as much as night. And I think, it you don't know it a lot of times, the circumstance that you're in while you're in them. And then you look back, it's like, ooh, it came from that. And not just me,
Yeah.
there are other people too. It's like you made it through because it's normal to you. That's what you're used to. So that's what you think everybody is. I couldn't remember, holidays were just horrible. I remember holidays when my grandpa we said, as I have an older brother and sister, he wanted me to assimilate and get to know them because I did have siblings. So we got split up. I was just a baby. And so for like Thanksgiving and Christmas, a lot of times he would send me down to my father and he had remarried. I don't know if you ever had a step situation, a step parent or sibling, but that's horrible. We just never got along. So I got a younger stepbrother, and my father was evil. My sister and brother, sometimes they were mean to me because my father would say, "Oh yeah, you got it rough here, but he's got it out there. The life of luxury out by grandpa's." It was not good. And I remember one Christmas Eve, my one of my stepmother's friend, she had a brother who came in and got in a fight with one of the bikers. So they're fighting and they got the knife at its throats and the cops show up and his Christmas tree gets knocked over and it's just like, what? This is not what I see on Charlie Brown Christmas, Frosty the Snowman. This is not it. So but at your age 8, 9, it says that's normal. You think, okay, well, everybody goes through stuff like that. Just always a tension, never happiness, never laughter, never none of that. So maybe that's why comedians want to overcompensate because they didn't have it as a kid.
So, what about, I was gonna say, you did talk about your family coming together, and you have posted on social media that you had a rough situation with your family, but then
Yep.
at one point, yeah. So can you talk about what happened to change?
Yeah, we had 20 years. I went through I had a bad car accident and I needed some money and I contacted my sister. And I said, look, I'm really, really rough now. Well, I'll pray about it. And I just blew up at her. I sent her this nasty letter. I wrote it out, the letter, and I sent it to her. I probably shouldn't have. I never want to talk to you again. And I need help. And, you never helped me. So I called her about a year later and I said, hey, I'm really sorry. Hung up the phone, wrote her a letter. I said, look, I didn't mean forever. I was going through a bad situation and I really don't talk. Well, the bank robbery was going on. She didn't know anything about that. And I said, can I just tell you what happened? And, obviously we're brother, sister. And so 1 year became 3, became 5, became 10, became 20 years. So it was 19 and a half years. And I said, look, please, will you, just sit down with me and let me say it. You don't have to ever talk to me again. You have to invite me over for Christmas, nothing like that. So I finally went to my half brother that I never got along with at all. I said, look, I just want to sit down with all of you and just see you face to face. We're getting older. We're all going to die. Well, you're going to just talk. I'm not going to talk mess, anything like that. So we all got together at a cheesecake factory and hadn't seen him, 20 years. My brother got along good. My half brother never got along. Sister and I was very tense. So I know they like to casino gamble. That's what they like to do. So I took the dollar scratch off tickets. So I took $100 bill and I bought $100 $1 scratch offs. So 33, 33, 33, and I had one for me to scratch off. Something okay. And the Cheesecake Factory parking lot was overflowing, so I was late. I was supposed to be there at whatever time. I'm like 10 minutes late. So they think I'm standing them up. Oh my gosh. So I got there. I said, well, I'm supposed to meet 3 other people. What do they look like? I said, I haven't seen them in 20 years. I mean, they're 3 white people, two males and a female. That's all I can tell you. And the place is absolutely packed. So I'm walking through and and there they are. And they looked at me and I looked at them, and it was the most awkward moment, I think, of my entire life. What do you do? What do you say? So I sat down. Now, you haven't seen him in 20 years. What do you say in that situation? So I looked at him. I said, what's new? And that got a big laugh right there. Okay, pop the tension a little bit. I said, look, okay, you can think I'm an ass, but here's some tickets for you. I know you like to gamble, blah, blah, blah. And then it was awkward again. And about 10 minutes into it, and I said, thank you for coming, number one. And I just want to look you all in the eye and say, for whatever I ever did to make you mad or fell short as a brother or anything, I want to look you in the eye and say, I'm honestly, truly sorry. We came from a rotten situation, and I hope we don't go to our graves, uh, bitter at each other. And they all just kind of looked down and nobody said anything. And the waitress came. Thank goodness she came. So we ordered the food, blah, blah, blah. We came. We had some things we opened up because I hadn't seen them in 20 years. What happened? Some people get married. Some people, So at the very end, I said, hey, this is a huge night. I really appreciate it. So I had business cards. I gave them all the business card. I said, you don't have to invite me over for anything, but I just want to tell you that we are still siblings and family. So if you ever need anything, just let me know. I'm here for you. He just kind of looked down, didn't say anything. We didn't hug. We walked out. And a week later, I got a letter from my sister, and she said, "I just want to tell you, I think it was really gutsy of you to, invite us all there and to apologize to our face. And I just want to tell you that I'm sorry too." That was it.
Wow.
Turned it around. We spent Christmases together since we've gotten together. I try to see her once a week if I can, but at least check in and text with her, and we're closer now than ever. And I said all I ever wanted to do was hear you say that our mom and our dad screwed us over, and they never said they always made excuses. And she said, "Yeah, dad was an ass, and mom, yeah, I don't know what she did." And she told me stories that I never heard. She's 4 years older than me, so I was just a little baby, and it was a horrible situation. They were fighting, and he beat the crap out of her, and it's just like, oh man, that's not what a 4-year-old kid's supposed to see. And she was having a hard time with it as well. So we totally broke it down. My older brother passed away. He had a stroke, and he ended up dying. He was in a nursing home. And my younger half brother and I, we don't hit it off. I don't know. He's in his own little world, and he thinks I'm the devil. And I said, there's nothing I can do to change it about that. I don't hate you, but I guess we'll never talk to each other again. So it had a mixed relationship. I never would tell that, but now I hear people say, "Oh, my sister and I didn't talk for 30 years," and blah blah blah. So I guess that's more common than I thought. Of
Yeah.
siblings, you think you're all from the same family. Do you have siblings?
Yeah, and one st sister died
Hmm.
10 years ago, and I had some issues. She's much older than me, but I had some issues with her, and luckily I got to say certain things when she was, her days were numbered,
Hmm.
and it really I got closure.
Good.
So,
Oh, that's so important.
yeah, I'm really glad. And she also told me, I don't want to cry, but she also
I'm
told me some
sorry.
stuff. I don't think she really respected me. And then she
Hmm.
told me some stuff that was very encouraging. She's like, "You're very successful." Well, I wasn't technically, but she said, "I'm very
Hmm.
proud of you, da da da." And I don't want to cry, but yeah, she told me these very encouraging things on her deathbed
All it
and on the
takes.
phone too. Yeah, on the phone too. And so after she died, I thought, wow, I really have closure. So, and then I have a brother and sister in LA. And
Okay.
my brother, I just talked to him for an hour the other day. Now I can call my brother. I love my brother, so I call him sometimes. We talk about things, but
Hmm.
I don't want to get into it. Maybe one day I will, but I've had, let's just say I've had some issues with my family, and it's not my fault, but I just made some decisions that people don't like. I'll just say that.
And that's, you
So,
know what? And that's totally your life's choice to do that. But people don't always react to it. But I think you said the important word, closure. That's it. And I don't think everybody gets closure in every situation. And when you do, you got to just really appreciate it and let it go for what it is.
but also you have to make your own closure because, for instance, with
Uh-huh.
my mom, she had a really, it's very hard when you you have to leave a place because people want to kill you and then you have to start over. Okay, so I'll just say that.
Hmm.
But so I think it affected her. But she and I had some issues up until the day she died, and I had to make my own closure.
That's even harder to do. More respect for
Yeah.
it. Good for you. That's not easy to do.
No. And she didn't hate me or anything. We just had differences, and
Yeah.
it wasn't resolved like my sister and me, and it wasn't
Hmm.
resolved like my dad and me. So it took me like a year, but I made my own closure. So now I have no negative thoughts or anything.
See, now you're doing it too. Not easy to do. And I think a lot of people get to a point, I don't care how old you get, they can't do it. And I got to my point. It's like I don't want to live like this anymore. I have to find a way to do it or it's going to eat me alive. I'll be dead.
Well, yeah, because also, what I did notice too is I held my parents for 15 years.
Hmm.
And I noticed that if you have a good attitude, your health is better. And I used to think that was not true, but then I actually saw the proof of it, that my mom had really bad health. She had a very good attitude, and it extended her life. And she seemed very radiant and very positive.
Hmm.
And also with my dad too, he had a good attitude and he became very chill and peaceful. So I think that makes a big difference. So we have to do it too.
Without a doubt. And I think sadly, I don't, what do you think the percentage is? I don't even want a hazard to guess that don't even make it because it hurts. It's uncomfortable to go in there in the deepest part of your hurt. And that's where you protect your heart, but there's still that soft spot in there and they find a way to get through and poke it. And oh, it hurts.
But you have to go through like your grandmother did, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
it totally is.
You have to work through it. You just have to say, like with my mom, I had like it took me, like I said, a year, but you have to just work through the anger and all that kind of stuff. And then you come to the other side and you're like, okay, I'm free. Even the people I used to work with in radio, there's a place I worked in radio where the people were very cruel, etc. I
Mhm,
have no bad feelings towards them whatsoever. Now I don't want
mhm,
to see them again, but when
mhm.
I think about it, I think, wow, that was a great experience. I learned a lot. I no longer have that within me, that bitterness.
Then you win.
It's much better.
Yeah, it's big. Good
But
for
you're
you.
not winning against anybody. You're winning for yourself. That's what I
That's all that
noticed.
matters. That's the only thing that matters is winning for yourself. And sometimes the other people will never come around. And I don't know about you, but I know I have a long list of haters. It's like, okay, well, that's fine. And I see the third party stuff that they write about. Said you never tell me to my face. And a lot of times I'll seek them out. It's like, well, okay,
You mean they
what?
hate you?
Oh yeah, I got a big list of haters. And a lot of times in comedy, I think a lot of it's jealousy for whatever reason. And I said, look, I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be, but if I think someone is a poser and a faker, it's like I don't want to be around you. I said, there's 8 billion people in this world. I don't need you. You don't need me. I don't want to be around you. Don't fake be nice to me to my face and then don't talk to me. It's like I'm just gonna go around you and associate with people that I like and I've had to alienate people and it's like some people can't take that. And maybe it's because of their own dents in their own can. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I got a long list of haters. And then well, he's an ass. Well, I think so too. And then they team up when you're not around and then they so I go to places sometimes it's like I could just feel it's like, oh, I've heard about you. So okay.
Well, that's like radio because I've had that
Oh,
situation.
totally. Yes.
Wait, but first of all, why would people be envious of you if you're not on TV and stuff? Because I think like Chris Rock, I love Chris Rock. I think
Hmm.
he's my favorite comedian, but
Okay.
I'm sure there are a lot. I wonder if there are a lot of haters of him because he's a multi-millionaire and
Yeah, I'm
very
sure there
popular.
are. Yeah. And I think, anybody that they think being around comedians my whole life, I know how they think as a rule. And radio people, I think too. If Margaret Larkin gets a job in Chicago at WBBM, I might be in Arizona, but she's taken away from me because she got a break and a job and is doing well, which is totally not true. And they'll think it's like, okay, if Dobie got a job in radio or if he's got on TV for 5 minutes on a national TV show, that's taken away from my glory, so I hate him. It's like I don't know why you think that way, but it's very common thought.
So what? So how do you think like people like Jerry Seinfeld, all those superstars,
Hmm.
and all those guys, do you think that they also have a lot of haters?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Seinfeld, it got to the point where it was hip and cool to diss on Jerry Seinfeld because he was
Oh,
establishment.
okay.
Why is it that and they just, he talked to the millions. You know who really got a lot of crap was Carrot Top. I don't know if
Oh, I know
familiar
who he
with
is. Yeah. Why'd he get crap? I remember him. Yeah.
because he's a prop guy. And for some reason, comedians tend to think, I'm not saying it's right, but they think that if you're doing a prop act and I'm just up there doing a monologue, that mine's harder. So I am a better performer and you're scum. Even though Carrot Top is at the Luxor Hotel making millions of dollars. He's had a residency there for, I think, 17 years, if I'm not mistaken. I got a chance to meet him this year, actually. I was out there. I was working at Brad Garrett's club at the MGM, and one of the acts there opens for Carrot Top, and I got a chance to meet him. And I went up to his face and I said, I just want to apologize to you for all comedians that ever dissed you. I said, this is a wonderful, place. And he goes, yeah, and I kind of get that all the time. He's just a nice guy, totally uncalled for. And I said, we were talking about that. I said, comedians are dented cans. That's the term I came up with one time on the air, and I stuck. And
And you had that dented can diary, which is excellent. That
yeah,
blog.
thanks. Yeah, and it's one of I just want to see if I could write about my life for 30 days, one page. And I turned out, I think it was 11 years I did every day. I never went less than a page or more than 2 pages, but thank you. Yeah, that was pretty therapeutic too.
Oh,
So good.
sorry. I thought you said,
No, no, I'm saying you're ahead of the game by doing it, Margaret. I'm proud of you by just, doing it for yourself. And hopefully one person that listens does that.
yeah. But I was gonna say about Carrot Top though. So he
Mhm.
did have a lot of haters, and he had to
Oh,
deal
still
that.
does.
Okay.
He still does.
Wow.
And I think it's to the point where I think comedians almost use him as a stereotypical bash. Yeah, it could be Carrot Top. Oh, it'd be horrible to make $11 million a year and work in Las Vegas. Oh, what a rotten
Uh,
life. Yeah, I pursued Carrot Top. Just when I'd love to be like, I'd love to have half his success.
right, of course. Well, so then do these people keep friends close? Like, so for instance, I think about Eddie, my gosh, what's his name? Eddie, who was on SNL for a long time. Eddie
Eddie
Murphy.
Murphy, Eddie Murphy. Yeah.
Didn't he have like close friends around him, people who knew him for years? Because
Mhm.
or aren't don't or not maybe that's not him, but don't some of these guys also keep some of their old friends around to keep it real?
Yeah, I think you have to keep it real in that situation because I don't, you've been around famous people, even radio people. It's not a real lifestyle. You got to have people that it's like, okay, I've known you for 20 years. I know what you drink at the bar. I know what you like at the restaurant. I can be myself around you. I think we all need that kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
But it's just funny that people
circle.
would be envious of you because it's not like
No,
you've been taught you're like yeah.
I was saying Chicago, I mean, Zanies was the big club there. I worked there for 25 years and I was one of their regulars. And they had a few regulars. I was one of them. And the joke, quote unquote, among comedians were they wanted me and a couple other guys to all die in the same car accident. So we'd be out of the way and they could all have our work. Ha ha ha. They were thinking of joking, but they weren't joking. They really wanted, it's like, okay. I get how that happens. And the owner said, look, it's my club, it's my chain. You guys do the good job for me. I know you. I like you. You're in. I don't have to hire anybody else. And is it fair? I'll be the first one to say, no, it wasn't fair. I had an unfair advantage at Zany's for 25 years. I was family to them. My holidays, I'd go to their house. The owner and the general manager and the club managers and stuff like that. I was part of the Zany's family. Then the owner passed away. The general manager retired. The club got sold. Now I can't even buy a ticket there. I haven't worked at Zany's in years. It's just one of those things where new regime, new combination. I'm not one of their boys. That's fine. I'm not bitter about it because I had a great run. I'm grateful for it. It was good, but not. They still work at Zany's? Nope.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, I went to
So,
Zany's one time to a group show and it was they kept insulting the audience because the audience wasn't responding in the way they wanted. So they kept insulting us all the time. And I thought, why don't you just keep it pro and just do your act and just
how
go
about
for
it?
it?
That yes,
Why are you punishing us?
that's the right answer. Yours is the right answer. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
the more I'm around comedy, the more I don't like it. I think it lasted for a long time as part of my life, and I learned the craft. And I really like being a mentor to people. But in anything, radio, comedy, writing, acting, any kind of creative endeavor, only a very few have the guts to be a lifer and to be in there for and go through anything and they really want to do it just because now it's kind of hip to be a comic. It's easy. There's a million websites you can go on and you can do Zoom shows, but to really be one-on-one with an audience, that takes a lot of sacrifice. It just does. And I don't think
Yeah.
anybody, 99% of people just they're not up for that.
Well, also another thing is that same with radio, like that's what happened to me sort of during the pandemic. And then after I just thought, I know I love radio. I mean, seriously, if I could be on a show or if I could work on a show, I would do it because I absolutely love the medium.
Hmm.
But I guess I just got tired of the way people were, like they're sort of to themselves, or if I tried to do something good, or if I tried to show my passion for something, I would be mocked or I
Hmm.
wouldn't be treated well, or somebody would decide that they don't like me and then they try to destroy me, like I say, put a mallet to my knee or something. And I just thought, I don't really want to deal with that. That's what I was talking about before.
Well, don't you think now that what you're creating here is you're in
Yeah,
charge and you know enough people that know you, like you, respect you. You're very
right.
smart. You're good on the air. I mean, I think you can do your own thing. Making money, that's another thing. It
Right,
might
of
be hard
course.
to turn a buck, but I think your creative outlet could be here.
Right. That's what I'm saying is luckily with digital, if people don't want to deal with a business and deal with all the drama that you're talking about, anybody, as I tell the students at Columbia, anybody can create content online and you can have your day job and make money, and then you can have your creative outlet and do what you love to do.
Yeah, and don't you think what I think is cool about the online digital world is you can really focus on whatever that passion is, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Baseball cards or fishing or not. Tell us about your book. I mean, I know your listeners know, but I think it's fascinating that you wrote a book.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a script based on it. It's called Wicker Park Wishes, and it takes place in 90s Chicago, and is about this party girl and her struggles. And actually, I feel really crazy. I can't believe I actually wrote it because I have a friend who was reading, and he's like, "You really get into it." I get into the thought process, but
Hmm.
the thing is that in order for me to get inside this person's head, which is not me, I had to become another character. It was like acting, and I felt sort of crazy doing it. I was like another persona. I became another
So it's
persona.
like Tyler Perry. He did it
It's
as
like that.
yeah,
Well, that's
okay.
why I'm reading this Tyler Perry book, the Medea book, because he was able to do it. Now he's very successful already, so he made a lot of money from that book. I haven't, but it's like I don't even know how he does it. If I could ever interview him, I'd like to know how he gets into another character so deeply. But this person was, and also another thing is that I have a couple fake blogs going, so it's in the
Okay.
voice. Have you ever done fake blogging?
No, I never. I had a hard enough time doing my own. So I
Because
mean,
fake
it's
blogging is when people used to do this a long time ago before social media came around. But basically, you take on a persona, you write the blog from that persona, and that's basically how it started. Is I took on this persona of a 20-something-year-old party person, and then I thought, what if I wrote a book on it, but based in the 90s before the internet got really big?
mhm.
And so now like I did the book, and now I'm doing a script with based on some aspect of it, and I still do the fake blogging.
Wow, you're into it.
But to go into yeah, because like so what I'll do is I'll go outside, I'll hear some chicks, some women talk, and I'll think, ooh, that's some I can do something with that. And then I'll go back to the fake blog and I'll write some scenario from a 20-something-year-old's perspective.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's cool. So
I hope you're a huge success and you let me drive your limo.
right. No, I won't be a success. But that's my point, is that's what I was saying during the pandemic. But you did touch upon it, is maybe a creative business doesn't serve us well, but we can still be creative in some way.
Yeah, and I
So
think to me, I have to do that, or I'll totally be on a rifle, bell tower with a rifle. I think some people need to be creative. They just do, and it's nice to be able to get paid for it. And I was for a lot of years as a comedian, but man, if I didn't have that, I don't know what I do.
okay, yeah, I just want to ask you about creativity because I've been thinking about that lately too, now that I have more time. But I noticed too that like I've never made a living from creativity, but I noticed that if I don't express myself in a creative way, I feel like some kind of suffering. I know that sounds
Yeah.
extreme, but what is it about creativity that makes some of us want to do it?
I think we have to do it. It's an outlet. I think it's, problem solving or, sometimes it diverts from your sources of pain. But oh yeah, I think creative types, you're not left-handed, are you?
No.
An overwhelming percentage of creative types I have found to be left-handed. Not all, but a large amount. I was the only one in my family that was left-handed. It just seems to be conducive to that, but it's not necessary and a requirement. But I think there's just some people that's what you do, and if your mind's not working, you'll die. Ask Richard Pryor. There's the book about Richard Pryor's life, and they asked him, why do you do stand-up comedy? And it's like, if I don't, no, because if I stop, I'll die. That's the name of the book. And the same thing. It says he had to do it. And I think the same thing. I have to do it. And
But
you,
why do some people have to do it and some people don't? Because sometimes I wish, like in one interview, I've only done a couple interviews, but one guy asked me, Chris Bass, he said, um, what would you do if you could be anything? What would you be? And I'd say I'd be like some corporate worker
mhm,
in an office in a cubicle. Because it seems
okay.
like it's easier to survive that way. But how come certain people have to feel creative and certain people don't?
I think it's a gift. Some people are just blessed with it, or maybe it's a curse. I don't know. But I mean, you play music. I cannot play one note of music. And
I
it's
did. I used
a
to.
lot of times I think that's in you, and that's an outlet, a creative outlet in some ways. But I could sit there for hours, and I'm not interested in it. It's not, maybe it's just not your way. But everybody's creative in some way. I really think so. Even my grandma, who didn't, everything, she was creative in the way she arranged she called them her pretties, and they would just, figurines and stuff like grandmas have. I'm sure your grandma had the same thing. And she had to put them just so in her living room, and she dusted them and she made them look good and she arranged them. And in her way, that was her creativity. I mean, she didn't write any scripts or books or plays or anything like that, but for her, that was enough.
But what
She,
but what does creativity mean in terms of like, so for instance, I always say for instance, but I noticed that if people are creative, okay, so they
Mhm,
have this passion, and then they
mhm,
start to get into the business of that creative outlet, and then it changes the dynamic and it becomes
sure.
really stressful. So what do you think about creativity plus business?
That is a rare combination that most people can't do. I have been horrible at it to date. I am choosing to improve, but I got a long way to go.
You
I
never
mean,
had a manager?
I attempted to have a couple of managers. I had a business manager one time that embezzled $8,000. And to me, that's a lot of money. People say, "Oh, Billy Joel's brother-in-law embezzled 1 million." Well, to me at the time, 8,000 was like 1 million.
Mhm.
And so then I found out that he did it, and I sat down with him and I said, "Hey, I looked at the bank account and well, I hope we can still be friends. I was going to pay you back." No, we're not. So yeah, business and show business. There's different things there. And I think if you want to do your passion just for you, it's I think it's better. I do, because you're totally right. It does taint it when you got to put business to it. I have to, tone my act to certain places when I'm there because I need this payday and I can't do what I want to do, but this is what this audience is going to want to. So I have to give it to them if I want to get paid, which I do. I need to.
So what do you want to do? What would you rather do? Like if you said what do you said you can't do what you want to do, so what do you want to do?
Well, honestly, truly, at this point in my life, I love to mentor newer comedians because
No,
I'm
I'm sorry.
like,
I'm sorry. Well, first of all, before you get into mentoring,
yeah.
what do you want to do in the act that you have to tone down?
Oh, no, no, I'm just saying because I like to do what I think is kind of smart stuff and subtle stuff sometimes.
Okay.
Maybe talk about some of the childhood stuff. But like, for example, cruise ships. Those people are not a comedy audience. That's like Walmart on the water. They're just looking at you. If you don't have a shiny object and do fart jokes, they're going to stare at you. And that's not why I'm hired. I'm hired to make them laugh. So sometimes I got to do things I wouldn't necessarily choose to do, but I took the gig. So I have to, that's part of my job.
Okay. And then you're saying what you really want to do is mentor people?
Yeah, I love mentor people. I got a Facebook group called the Maxwell Method of Stand-Up Comedy. And I call it that not for ego purposes, but Colonel Sanders was smart enough to put his face and his name on a bucket of chicken. He didn't invent fried chicken, but he came up with his own recipe. I didn't invent comedy, but I came up with my own style. I'm thinking, okay, 40 years later, if I go back to the young me starting out, I say, okay, this is how to do it. This is the steps. This is why you do it this way. Hopefully, you'll make better choices than I do, and you're going to make mistakes and you learn from them, but it's smarter to learn from other people's mistakes.
Hmm. But
Much
see, when
smarter.
people like I took a class at Zany's, a comedy class, and it was actually helpful because I wanted to do some public speaking, which I did weirdly after I took that class, I did get a couple opportunities to do some training, but and it helped me with the concept, but I didn't have a goal of becoming a comedian. But
Hmm.
what about people who they go into something and they think, okay, I want to learn comedy and I want to become a comedian, I want to make money from it. I mean,
Well,
how do they reconcile the reality with their desires?
Well, I think sometimes they get a slap in the face. They're thinking, oh, it's going to, take me 6 weeks and I'm going to, pay my dues. Well, I'm 40 years in and I'm still paying dues. It takes a really long time. It's always a lot longer than anybody thinks. Oh, it might take me a year. It'll take you 10 years. And now it's harder than ever than to make a living just because there's so many comedians and most of them are terrible. And there's not the outlet. It used to be, okay, I could work at a comedy club or at least it said comedy show tonight. Now they're doing ambush shows. They're at some pool hall or biker bar and free comedy. Well, people aren't invested in it, and it's just that's dysfunctional. It's not the way to learn how to be a comedian against people's will, but that's what it is, and they need attention so bad. So to really stick through that, how bad was your father or mother that you're going to survive that kind of abuse? And you go down there to an open mic and you go on at 1 o'clock in the morning, but you got to get there at 8 o'clock to sign up, and you get 3 minutes when there's 14 comedians in there who aren't paying attention to you. Okay, you might do it once or twice. Are you going to do that for 10 years? There's no progress there. That's what I'm
Mhm.
saying. It's an ugly game. So I'm thinking, okay, know why you're going in it. Know that it's a business going in. That's what I teach in my classes all the time. It's like work on yourself as a person as you're working on your comedy. My biggest mistake was I threw everything into comedy. My life is so miserable. I'm going to throw it into comedy. I'm going to be so good that they got to like me and they got to hire me. So you got this big imbalance in your life.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking, build yourself as a person along with comedy. It's a skill. It's like how can I say it? Like a sidecar on a motorcycle. The sidecar comes along with the trip. So, but the person riding the motorcycle is the one steering. So you got to be the one riding the motorcycle, and comedy is your sidecar. Though that's going to be the best. It only took me 40 years to learn that, but I think that's the answer.
But do you think that a creative pursuit is still valid even if somebody's not
Oh,
successful in
oh
it or even
yeah.
making money?
Oh, absolutely is. Yes. And I think there's nothing wrong. If somebody picks up a guitar and they don't end up in Van Halen, they're not a failure. Why can't you entertain a kid's birthday party or just, take some stress out, come up with a song or something? Oh yeah. I totally think there are people that should do comedy for therapy and for a hobby and for creative outlet and all that stuff. How about maybe you could put on shows? Because one thing, there's a lot of talented comedians that they don't want to or they don't know how to put on shows. So say you're in a town somewhere and you know a venue or two and you organize it, maybe you could host the show or hire someone else and you could get a prime spot and give other comedians work. What's wrong with that? Nothing.
Mhm.
Like you said, you have your corporate job and you go out and you do maybe 2 or 3 shows a month. Great. Doesn't mean you're a failure. Still write jokes, still hang out with comedians. You get the best of all worlds. You don't have to, people really, oh, I wish I'd give my life if I could do what I did. I gave my life. You're 2,000 miles from home in a nasty hotel with a cockroach crawling across the ceiling after you just entertained some biker bar and your check might bounce. And it's like, oh, this is not, it's not the glamour you think it is.
But what about the guys who made it really big? I mean, do you think they
Mm-hmm.
think, okay, I've been vindicated because I've become successful now?
You'd think that would be the way, and then it's like, well, I got an HBO special, but that other person they got more money, and they never seem
Are you
to.
serious?
Oh, it happens all the
At
time.
that level of
Yeah,
success?
a lot of backbiting and jealousy. Well, if they get a limo, I want a limo and a shrimp cocktail back. Oh yeah, not all, but a lot of it is. And you think once you get there and you've made it, that all your problems are going to be gone. You just get a new set of problems. Totally true.
Like,
Go
like
ahead.
what? Do you know what kind of problems you get?
Problems you get. Okay, here's a good one. Especially now with the internet age, as you were talking about, it used to take, I would say, several years to develop an hour of comedy, fresh hour. Okay, now if someone gets even slightly famous, people are taking pictures on their phone of them on stage when you're putting your act together. Then they put it online. Well, it's not ready yet. It's not finished, but that's not that good. I like the first special, but the second or third special, so to build that new material to put it out, and realistically, probably at least 4 or 5 years to come up with a new special. Well, if they've seen your other special, are you going to be famous, top of mind 5 years from now with all the TikToks and all the hundreds of Netflix specials and everyone out there? Very, very difficult to keep current. You got to be everywhere. So you got to do, podcasts and you got to keep up with everything when you don't necessarily want to. It is totally consuming and you have to be internet proficient. It's just the way it is. You have to.
Hmm.
So I am not necessarily, but I have to get better at it. And before it was not like that. I could travel around with basically the same act for 20 years. And I was always good at, okay, I got basically the same material, but I never do it in exactly the same way. Sometimes I open with what I used to close with what I used to open with. And for that particular night, that's to me the artist part was to give every audience my best, no matter what that was. See, I've got an hour and a half of material in my head. I got to do 45 to 50 minutes. What best 45 to 50 can I give that audience on that night? It won't be the same every night. In fact, many nights it wasn't. Some nights I do one bit longer. Some nights I might do it for 3 minutes. Some nights I might do it for 10 or 11 minutes. And that was to me the fun part of it. Now, there's no way I would suggest any comedian build their career like that. You got to come up, everything has got to be a chunk you can either put on TV, put on a TikTok video or a short thing like that. That's how you got to write it. And it changes the entire business around. It
Hmm.
does.
Well, so now what about, so back to being creative.
Hmm.
Is it essentially being creative for creative sake to just express yourself as a human being? Or I'm just trying to figure out what it means now that we have a proliferation of digital, et cetera.
Well, in my opinion, if you're going to try to do it from a business angle, you need to go at it from the start that way. And if it come a time, it could be a month in, a year in, or 10 years in. It's like, you know what? This is not going how I want it. Realistically, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it full time. Then you can have some free. Now I'm just going to do what I want, like you just said. But if you really want to be, is a long time performer, you got to handle it like a business. I think you got to move that way. It's like, okay, I'm 5 years into it. Am I at a certain level? Have I gotten hired enough places to close the show where I'm looked at as a closer? Well, it used to be there were agencies that might book 15 or 20 different weeks of work. So technically, like Zanies, they had four clubs at their peak in Chicago, and they had one in Kalamazoo for a while and in Nashville. Well, that's 6 weeks of work. A lot of times I could work 2 or 3 times because I wasn't a headliner in those. So that's, 6 times 3 is 18 weeks out of 52. Then there was an agency in Grand Rapids that had about 15 to 20 weeks. They would come and go. And there was another one in Louisville that had about 15 weeks. And there was a club called the Punchline in Atlanta. Well, at their peak, they had, I think, 11 or 12 clubs. So it didn't take that many phone calls. I could work an entire year. Now, every gig, every one nighter is booked by one person. So you got to, put them together. And I'm here Thursday. Can I get there on Friday? I don't see how anybody does it anymore. It's impossible. You got to get in with everybody and say, hey, oh, I got to move your week in November to next March. No, I can't move that week. I'm between Kansas City and Albuquerque. You're in El Paso. That's exactly what I needed for my routing. Doesn't happen anymore. I don't see how they do it. So that kind of stuff is a whole new game that I didn't have to go through in my time. So again, not no problems, new and different problems. Not the same journey.
Okay, so you're saying if people want to get into it as a business, then they have to decide in the beginning. So let's
Yep.
say they're in it for a while. How does somebody know when to give up it as a main business?
I think you got to look deep in you, and there comes a time when you just know. And I know that sounds corny, and they all set up, the person you married. I don't know how you met your husband, but he was the one for whatever reason. There came a time in your mind when he was the one, and you were the one for him. And whether you agreed on that at the same time in the same way doesn't matter. The fact remains you got together. And I think the same thing when you're a comedian, it's like, okay, I'm doing all the things I have to do and I'm getting to work, but you know what? I'm not getting calls back and the audiences aren't there. In your head, it's like, boy, I'm 32, I'm 42, I'm 52, I'm 22, whatever your age is, you just know.
Mhm.
And I knew in my heart, it's like, okay, I have the knack for this, but I also knew that I didn't want to be doing it when I was 60. I got into radio thinking, oh, that's going to be stable. I could have the best of both. Boy, was I
Well,
stupid
it's
there.
stable if you were like 1942 or something,
Yeah,
but
but I mean,
yeah.
okay, I probably did it, and my first gig was 1990 in Lansing, Michigan. I thought, okay, well, there's a lot of comedy work in Michigan, and I would work every night. So I do the morning show, but I would in Lansing was right in the middle of the state. Well, Grand Rapids is about an hour, Detroit's about an hour and a half, and all these other towns, so I could still do it. So there was really no risk there. I thought, boy, if I'm here for 20 years, I can become a draw in all those places. I'll be the king of Michigan, make a great living, and what's wrong with that? So it didn't work out. I think they know, but if you go in it with a professional, I think that you need a mentor now more than ever. And you need a mentor that can sit down and say, all right, it's a different world. You want to be professional at it? Let's try that way. And the people that want to be professional athletes, they get an injury. Okay, do they still play pickup games? Whatever the sport is. I don't know, basketball, baseball, football, whatever. I mean, look at someone like Caitlin Clark. Okay, whether you like her or not, she has opened up women's basketball to be a legitimate sport. There were little girls all over the world wanted to play basketball for years. Could they make a living at it? Probably not. She is bringing the sport up to so a lot of girls that necessarily couldn't make a living before will now be able to do that for the next few years. So that's why I'm a fan of hers because there are people with dreams that will get work. Does that make
So,
sense?
but yeah, so but let's say this it doesn't work out. Like I realize that I sort of don't like the business of some creative stuff.
Of life. I always equate it to a racing. I'm not a big car racing fan,
You're breaking up. You're frozen.
but a racing and I think a creative person needs some kind of, it could be even one person, a crew that can say, point you in this direction. Okay, say you start comedy at whatever age you start. Like anything, ballerinas have to start dancing at age 2, 3, like that. And if you start when you're 12 or 13, you're late. So people say, well, I'm 57, but I want to start comedy. Great. You're not going to be a professional. Well, Rodney Dangerfield, he made it when he was 60. He made it when he was 60. He started when he was 19. His dad was a comedian. too in vaudeville. So he took years off, but you do. It doesn't mean you can't have a hobby, but you got to think like a pro. It's like, okay, I'm in my 20s. I want to give this a shot. Maybe you're with a spouse that supports or doesn't support you. Maybe your family doesn't support you. Do I really want to give it all up and go for a dream? That's a hard choice. You
Yeah.
have to have business. You have to have a business sense and a plan.
Yeah. And also when you were talking, you buffered, maybe because your connection. We've also been talking for
Oh,
two and a
okay.
half hours,
We can
but I
go.
was gonna say no, but I was gonna say also that that what the thing is that I think when that's a question about creativity because sometimes somebody feels a passion for something, then they get into the business, then they realize, you know what, the business part of it isn't for me, but I still want to create. I'm just wondering,
Mhm.
what is it within human beings that makes us want to create despite not having an audience or something?
I think it's
It's
in
mystery.
inbred. It's in us. It's
Yeah.
fun. You don't think
Yeah.
it's fun to write a good article or you wrote your book?
Yeah.
Wasn't that
It's
great to
fun.
see I mean, you show me the cover. It's like that's one of the coolest covers I've ever seen in my life. I don't even I would read it. I'd like to read it, but even the cover alone is like to see Margaret Larkin buy I saw mine for the first time. It's like buy Dobie Maxwell. Wow. Is
Yeah.
it ego?
But
Is
when
it
but that's because it's out in the public, but sometimes you don't have that public. That's what's difficult about trying to appeal to consumers or the public in general for creative reasons because either they don't like it, it's not what you intended. Like so for instance, the people who like my book, it's not the audience that I thought. I discovered it's a different kind of audience.
okay? Let me ask you this. If you were going to change that and you really go and try to make this a bestseller, what would you do that you're not doing now?
Yeah, I don't really to be a bestseller it has to be I realize now I'd have to write it differently, but I think I told the story I wanted to tell. So,
Okay, that's all you can do.
yeah.
So maybe that not might not be your entree into the publishing thing. So that your next book will be that way, and then
Yeah, you're frozen again. You're freezing, which is strange, but
I really like Margaret Larkin. Yeah, I read a book by her. They'll go on. Oh, that was really different than her book that I read. Do nothing but sit and do podcasts like this, right? And do gigs that I want to. Life would be Shangri-La, but it isn't.
yeah. Okay, well, you just totally froze for a while, but anyway, maybe we should wrap it up. So the bottom line
Okay,
is,
sorry. That was the
yeah, I don't
best
know
point
what
I
it is.
made too. It was the secret to success too.
Okay, what's the secret?
No, I don't know. I just babbled.
Uh,
Listen,
no, it's the
just
unfortunate. I know. Yeah.
do what you love.
Okay, do
Like
it, love. Yeah.
George Clinton says, free your mind and your ass will follow. That's what I say.
Yeah. Yeah, do what you love. I mean, also sometimes you can do what you love, but you're not going to make money from it, so you have to figure out a way to pay your bills and so forth.
Yeah, that's true too. So what can I do to help you? This is really great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say that now you're frozen again, but you did say that forgiveness, the most important thing you've realized is forgiveness. Is that true? And right now you're frozen again because you're in Wisconsin and your internet connection is probably not as strong. My internet connection, it says it's excellent right
I don't
now.
know. Do we need to plug anything or
No. Well, anyway, no, I was just
not?
talking because you froze again, but
You
you
froze again
said
too. Yeah, exactly.
okay, so forgiveness you said is important. Is that the most important thing that you've realized?
Yes, yes. I think it has opened my life to so many other things. That was the one key. That everything, all the other dominoes are falling because that it was a hard thing. But yeah, I do think so.
Okay. And I guess that's it. I'm going to stop this because